Chapter 21. Boom. The sharp energy and the huge snake tail completely engulfed Kabuto Yakushi. Sasuke and Sakura were also blown away by the remaining wind, and fell heavily on the towering tree behind them with two bangs and bangs. Kabuto Yakushi, die! At this time, the voice of the system prompt appeared in Yuyi's mind. Hidden mission, revenge, young man. Mission, get stronger, get stronger, get stronger. Then find a chance to kill Kabuto. Completed. Mission reward, 1 gold treasure chest. This was the hidden mission that Yuyi triggered when he first crossed over to the Naruto world, and today it can finally be considered completed. However, now is not the time to check the harvest. Yuyi's upper body stood up, and his huge body stood like an ancient demon, with a ferocious mouth and spitting out snake tongue. The snake body swayed slightly, staring at Naruto and the other two, with a dim gaze, as if looking at prey, which made the three people feel cold all over. To be honest, Yuyi felt a little tricky about how to deal with Naruto and the others. With Yuyi's current strength as a Jonin, it would be easy to kill Naruto and the others. But in this way, it would easily destroy the plot that he was familiar with and would cause an unpredictable future. However, Yuyi did not have the intention to kill, but Naruto did. Seeing that Kabuto Yakushi was dead and the huge white snake was staring at him and the others, Naruto was shocked and angry, and the nine-tailed chakra surging in his body became more and more obvious. In addition to the pupils turning into Fox's vertical pupils, the surface of his body was flashing red, and there was a tendency to form a nine-tailed chakra coat. Naruto clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with fire, glaring at Yuyi, as if he was the embodiment of justice, angrily denouncing evil, saying, "This damn monster actually killed Senior Kabuto, I will never forgive you." Seeing Naruto impulsively trying to deal with Yuyi, Sakura was horrified, afraid that this would anger Yuyi, and quickly stopped Naruto and said, "Naruto, don't be impulsive, this monster is not something we can deal with at all, now it's better to retreat temporarily." Sasuke put his hands in his pockets, a trace of solemnity flashed across his cold face, and agreed. "Sakura is right, this white giant snake is probably also made by Orochimaru, our only way now is to leave here first, complete this exam, and then report this matter to the Invigilator, let them take action to clean up this monster." The persuasion of the two friends finally made Naruto give up the plan to fight with Yuyi. But, hearing that they were talking to each other as if no one was around, and wanted to calculate him, Yuyi looked strange. Originally, Yuyi wanted to let Naruto and the other two go. After all, when I was watching anime, these people had accompanied me throughout my youth. However, now, Naruto and the other two want to kill me. At this time, Yuyi suddenly came to his senses. After all, I am an alien in people's eyes. Those who are not my kind must have different hearts. Yuyi shook the snake head and threw away the unrealistic thoughts in his mind. The snake pupils burst into fierce light again, and the scary snake tongue hesitated. The exposed steel drill-like fangs emitted a chilling cold light. People are going to take their lives. No matter whether they are the protagonist or the son of destiny, they must be prepared to be killed by me. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, since you are looking for death, I will fulfill your wish. Yuyi said these words, but they were unintelligible. When they fell into the ears of Naruto and the other two, they became the earth-shaking snake cry. Hiss! Yuyi exuded a strong aura of terror all over his body. The huge snake body that was coiled moved, opened its bloody mouth, and the huge snake head swooped down, like a truck crashing straight up. This big mouth opened, as if it wanted to swallow the world in one gulp. The sharp wind like a knife blew on their faces, mixed with a disgusting fishy smell. Naruto and the other two who were under Yuyi's huge mouth suddenly changed color. Sasuke was almost unable to breathe due to the murderous aura coming from Yuyi. All the nerves in his body were tense, and his body seemed unable to accept the commands issued by the brain. It became extremely stiff, and he felt depressed in his heart. The feeling of powerless frustration quickly spread throughout his body. Sasuke thought of Orochimaru, who he met not long ago, and the bloody night when the Uchiha clan was exterminated, the figure he once looked up to. How can I die here? Fear, pressure, and a strong desire for life stimulated the potential of Sasuke's blood. However, Sasuke's pupils were bloodshot, and the two Megatama spun rapidly, and suddenly another Megatama appeared. 3 Megatama Sharingan. After the breakthrough, Yuyi's pressure on Sasuke suddenly decreased, and his mental power was immediately highly concentrated. At a speed faster than before, he quickly formed seals with both hands in the order of Si Wei Shen Hai Wu Yin. Fire Escape. Great Fireball Technique. The proud fire escape ninjutsu of the Uchiha clan erupted from Sasuke's mouth. A 1-meter-long red fireball, shining brightly, the scorching heat evaporated the moisture in the air, and the curling green smoke steamed, like a small sun, blasting towards Yu Yi's bloody mouth. It's worthy of Sasuke. In this way, we can repel this monster, right? Sakura's beautiful eyes were shining, as if she had found a support, and she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Even Sasuke himself was very confident in the great fireball technique. Then, they saw a scene that they would never forget. Yu Yi didn't dodge at all. He opened his bloody mouth and swallowed the 1-meter-long fireball in one gulp, as if he had eaten a bite of sweet ice cream. He also stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, looking unsatisfied. How could this happen? Sasuke was stunned for a moment. In his impression, the great fireball technique is the pride of the Uchiha clan. It is a ninjutsu that every clan member must master. It has made countless contributions on the battlefield and cut off the heads of countless powerful enemies. But Sasuke has never heard that there are creatures that can swallow the great fireball technique without any injuries. Unfortunately, Yu Yi didn't give Sasuke much time to think. In the eyes of Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, who were all in a state of collapse, Yu Yi opened his bloody mouth and a fireball bigger than Sasuke gushed out. The fireball with a diameter of 3 meters is 3 times larger than Sasuke. At this moment, the air around him seemed to stagnate. Under the angry eyes of Naruto and Sakura, a huge fireball with a long tail of sparks fell towards Sasuke like a meteor. Boom! This scene strongly stimulated Naruto's sensitive nerves. He was about to explode, and he cried out in shock and anger. Sasuke. Chapter 22. Sasuke was in the center of the fireball, and was immediately knocked away by the impact of the fireball. His internal organs seemed to have been hit hard by a big hammer. There was a sweet taste in his mouth, and he couldn't help but feel the blood boiling. With a wow sound, a mouthful of blood flowed wildly. It spurted out and was evaporated into blood by the high temperature of the flames in mid-air. While he was in mid-air, Sasuke's clothes were completely burned by the flames. The tongues of fire licked him angrily, and his skin was dry, cracked and burned. It was as if there were thousands of silver needles pricking his skin. Sasuke was dying from the pain. Ah! Amidst the screams, a charred figure flew out from the center of the explosion, drew a wonderful arc, and fell heavily on the towering tree behind. With a bang, it then fell to the ground, its breath floating and breathing out. He took less breath than he did, and was obviously seriously injured and on the verge of death. Sasuke. Seeing this scene, Sakura's beautiful eyes were filled with tears, and Naruto was furious. For this kind of person who wants his own life, even if he is one of the protagonists of this world, Yu Ye will kill him for you. At this moment, Nato didn't care whether it would ruin the plot. At this moment, the system prompt sounded in Yu Yi's mind. Congratulations to the host for triggering the hidden mission, my fate is up to me. Rare. The first phase of the mission, to destroy the second round of the Chunin examination in Konoha village as much as possible. Task description: as the snake of the world, you should act recklessly and lawlessly. Kill as many candidates and teachers as possible who participate in the exam. The more important the original characters you kill, the higher the score. Task reward, determined based on the score when the task is completed. This was the first time for Yu Ye to see a mission that was specially marked as rare. Moreover, the mission reward is not fixed, it all depends on the number of people Yu Ye finally kills and the importance of the character. If Nato kills all the 12 little heroes of Konoha, and even kills Gaara, I am afraid that the final score of this mission may be very high. However, if Nato wanted to do this, he had to ask the people present. For example, Naruto in a rage. Sasuke. The life and death of his good friend was unknown, which completely ignited Naruto's anger. Even the 5 elements seal technique given by Orochimaru disintegrated instantly at this moment. Naruto's pupils stood up, like the eyes of a fox. Huge red chakra emerged from his body, and an ominous aura filled the air. He stretched himself on all fours and lay on the ground. The surging red chakra covered his body, and a line of chakra condensed the fox's tail wags behind him. 9-tailed chakra, 1-tailed mode. Monster, I'm going to kill you. With a sharp shout, Naruto fell down slightly on all fours, then kicked hard, jumped up from the muddy ground, flew high into the sky, and pounced directly towards the hill like Nato. In the sky, a full moon hangs. The clear moonlight fell on Naruto's little figure, looking so heroic, so fearless, and so tragic. This is a young man who risked his life for his best friend. Yuya was not angry but happy, and let out a happy neigh from his throat. In his eyes, Naruto was no longer a time bomb, but a humanoid treasure that came to give scores. In anger, Naruto's claws, which were condensed from the nine-tailed chakra, hissed and instantly fell towards Yuyi's huge snake head. Laugh! The claws landed on Yuyi's hard snake scales, making the sound of gold and stone colliding. Sparks flew everywhere, but they only scratched the thick cuticle on Yuyi's body. When they fell on the silver-white snake scales, only the long white marks, but it couldn't cause much damage. How could it be? Naruto was shocked when he saw Yuyi's snake's tail move and sweep towards him, a fierce wind blowing in his face. He knew how powerful it was and didn't dare to take it head-on. The tail condensed by the nine-tailed chakra hooked Nato's huge snake head. Naruto was as agile as a monkey, as if swinging, his tail swayed, and then let go, and the whole person deftly avoided Nato's roar. The long tail landed on a big tree on the upper left. The snake's tail remains unabated. Wherever he passed, there was a burst of rocks and dust, and the surrounding big trees could not withstand the sweep of Yuyi's giant tree-like snake tail. Towering trees broke in half, startling the birds in the forest to fly into the vast night sky. Naruto jumped from the tree, like a golden rock spreading its wings, and turned over towards Yuya. With his bodybuilding skills as agile as a monkey, he actually came within 7 inches of Yuya. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was about to get big. The joy of getting revenge, he shouted. Monster, die! Naruto, who transformed into a tailed beast for the first time, didn't have any skills. He just followed his fighting instincts and let the giant claws condensed by the nine-tailed chakra clenched into fists. With full of anger, his fists vented down and landed with bang bang bang. 7 inches of Yuya. 7 inches is the snake's covering door. Even Nato cannot escape this law. The giant fist struck one after another, falling like raindrops, denting Yuyi's snake scales, and then unable to withstand repeated heavy blows, the snake scales cracked and exploded, revealing the unobstructed flesh and blood underneath. Seeing this, Naruto felt happy. But just when Naruto was about to do something, Yuya became angry. If Naruto, a bastard like him, really succeeds, Yuya will lose his skin even if he doesn't die. With a huge shock in his heart, Yuyi's huge snake head suddenly turned, opened its bloody mouth, and bit towards Naruto's body. The two exposed fangs were filled with cold air and even dripped with a few drops of saliva, and a foul-smelling wind blew towards Naruto's nose. Naruto lowered his head and looked at the 7 inches of skin and flesh under his feet. He raised his head and saw a huge snake head as big as the head of a truck approaching. He bit his silver teeth with a trace of unwillingness and said, "Damn, it's just that close." But no matter whether Naruto was willing or not, he was determined not to resist Nato's huge mouth head-on, so he quickly turned over and hid. Seeing Naruto flipping over in the air several times like a monkey, about to escape, a cunning look flashed in Yuyi's eyes, and the snake's tail, which was ready to go, shot out like a poisonous snake in the grass, and shot out from Naruto's head. Attack from behind. Seeing this, Sakura's thoughts were raised to her throat, with a look of shock on her face, and she said sharply, "Naruto, watch your back." Feeling the strong wind whistling behind his head, the joy that had just appeared on Naruto's face suddenly solidified, and he thought something was wrong in his heart. Before Naruto could make any move, the thick snake tail swung like a steel whip, carrying the force of thunder, and struck behind Naruto fiercely. Click! There was only a sound of broken bones, and Naruto followed Yuyi's huge snake tail and fell to the ground together. Boom! The ground trembled violently, and then the ground cracked, forming spider web-like cracks. Dark red blood flowed out from under the snake's tail, which was shocking. Chapter 23. Nato withdrew the snake's tail from the mud pit and was about to check if Naruto was dead. However, but at this moment, Yuyi's thermal energy sensor showed that 2 groups of people were moving here, and they were moving very fast, and they would reach here in about half a minute. One came from the southwest, only 1 person. One came from the northwest, a team of 5. If this was the case, Nato would not hesitate at all, but would take the risk and beat Naruto and Sasuke to death completely. As the saying goes, cut the grass and leave its roots, and they will grow again when the spring breeze blows. Since he is against Naruto and Sasuke, Nato will naturally not let them live. Even if they have exhaled more and inhaled less, Nato still feels unsafe and must be crushed into scum in order to feel completely at ease. Pity. From Yu Yi's thermal energy induction, he could clearly feel that the chakra fluctuations of the two groups of people rushing here were very strong. Especially from the southwest, there was only one person, but the chakra fluctuations emitted were extremely powerful, and extremely cold. It gave Yu Ye the feeling that he alone was worth hundreds or thousands of people. Now, there are two roads in front of Yu Ye. The first is to choose now and crush Naruto and Sasuke into scum. The second is to choose the future. Before the two groups of powerful enemies arrive, quickly grease the soles of your feet and escape. If he hadn't already offended thousands of snakes in Longdi Cave, Yu Ye would definitely have chosen the first option. In the worst case, he would have used reverse channeling to return to Longdi Cave if the opportunity was not good. Based on Yu Yi's understanding of Wan Shi, that cunning guy who was determined to repay every penny spent must still be squatting at the place where Yu Ye just left. In the language of the game, this is called squatting. Therefore, Yu Yi's answer is ready to come out. He chose the second option, the future. Yu Ye specifically chose the southeast direction and left in the opposite direction from when the two groups of strong men came. Seeing Yu Ye leave, Sakura finally woke up from the nightmare, her clothes wet with cold sweat, as if she had just been fished out of the pool. However, Sakura, who loves beauty and cleanliness, couldn't care about this at this time and rushed to the messy battlefield, crying and saying, "Sasuke! Naruto!" Naruto had the Nine Tails chakra as a coat and withstood a great impact. Although the bones in his body were broken and his internal organs were bleeding, at least he was still breathing and his life would not be in danger in a short time. As for Sasuke, that was really miserable. Not long ago, they met Orochimaru, and Sasuke was bitten on the neck by Orochimaru, planting the curse seal of heaven. He finally survived the fever, and soon after waking up from the coma, he was attacked by Nato again. Now, Sasuke was lying on the ground with his whole body charred and black. Seeing that the fluctuations of his chest were getting smaller and smaller, and he was on the verge of death, Sakura suddenly couldn't hide her sadness, and her tears fell on Sasuke like broken beads. "Sasuke, you will be fine. Definitely." Sakura pursed her lips tightly, fiddled with the bag on her waist, and took out a lot of emergency medical supplies. Regardless of whether they were useful or not, she rushed to the doctor in a hurry and used them all on Sasuke. "Sasuke, please, don't die." Unfortunately, no matter how hard Sakura tried, Sasuke's heart was still beating slower and slower. Whoa, who can save Sasuke? Exhausted mentally and physically, Sakura threw herself on Sasuke's charred chest, her pear blossoms dripping with rain, which made people pity her. Just when Sakura felt desperate, she heard footsteps approaching. At the same time, a cold, deep, magnetic middle-aged male voice, mixed with a hint of anger, sounded from Sakura's earlobe. "Get out of my way! Why does this voice sound so familiar?" Sakura suddenly raised her head, and a middle-aged face with pale skin that had been out of the sun for a long time was reflected in her beautiful eyes. Orochimaru. As the container prepared by Orochimaru, how could Sasuke safely let him go too far away from his sight? After noticing the battle taking place here, Orochimaru immediately set off for this place without saying a word. Unfortunately, he was a step too late after all and failed to catch Yu Ye. At this moment, Sakura took in a breath of cold air, like a furry cat, with cold hair standing on her body, and her pupils shrank into needles. But thinking of the huge white snake that appeared before, and Orochimaru who appeared now, Sakura's eyes flickered, as if she had thought of something. This must be Orochimaru's conspiracy again. Although she was still scared in her heart, Sakura still pressed her lower lip tightly and opened her arms like a hen protecting her chicks. She used her delicate body to stand in front of Sasuke, blocking Orochimaru's anxious sight. Scolded. "Orochimaru, what exactly do you want to do? Don't you think it's enough to hurt Sasuke?" Orochimaru. Just when Orochimaru was confused, a team of 5 people appeared from the forest in the northwest. Mitarashi Anko, and 4 unknown Konoha ninjas. As an examiner for the second round of the Chunin examination, Anko had just arrived when she heard Sakura's angry scolding. Anko raised her head and looked at Orochimaru with complicated eyes. Then when she saw Naruto and Sasuke, whose life and death were unknown on the ground, a flash of anger suddenly flashed in her eyes, and she asked Orochimaru loudly. "I didn't expect that after so many years of not seeing each other, Orochimaru, you would develop a bad habit of bullying the younger ones. There was obvious sarcasm in Anko's words. Orochimaru. At this moment, Orochimaru wanted to say loudly, "It was not me who did this." Of course, as a ninja who has gotten rid of vulgarity, Orochimaru would not say such a thing. After a short silence, Orochimaru covered half of his face with one hand, and on the other half, a wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, revealing his white teeth, and a low and magnetic voice sounded. "Red Bean, is this the tone you use when talking to your teacher whom you haven't seen for many years? That's really... I'm very disappointed." Red Bean's eyebrows were raised, and Orochimaru's words immediately evoked her bad memories of those years. She pulled out a sharp kunai, and together with the other 4 Konoha ninjas, confronted Orochimaru from a distance, saying, "Stop talking nonsense, today, Orochimaru, don't even think about stepping out of this forest." Orochimaru glanced at the dying Sasuke, and anxiety flashed in his eyes, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he smiled wickedly and said, "That's not necessarily true. The battle is about to start." If Yu Yi knew that Orochimaru took the blame for him shortly after he left, he would probably wake up laughing in his dreams, and give a thumbs up and praise. Orochimaru, what a good comrade. After Yu Yi left, he breathed a sigh of relief when he found no one nearby in the thermal energy sensing. Yu Yi remembered the golden treasure chest he got when he killed Kabuto Yakushi before, and quickly took it out, his eyes eager to try. "I wonder what treasure I will draw." Chapter 24. The levels of the treasure chest, from low to high, are black iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, star, king, emperor, legend, epic, legend, myth. Yu Yi killed Kabuto Yakushi and got the golden treasure chest, which made Yu Yi have some guesses. If the level of the obtained treasure chest is associated with the ninja, it can be corresponded one by one as follows: Genin, Chunin, Special Jonin, Ordinary Jonin, Elite Jonin, Penumbra, Ordinary Shadow, Senior Shadow, Top Shadow, Super Shadow, Quasi 6 Paths, Creator God. Back to the present, Yu Yi is a little uneasy. After all, the previous few times of opening the treasure chest, the luck was good. Even if the Emperor of Europe is added, it is estimated that the luck has been almost consumed. I am afraid that nothing good will be opened this time. But no matter what, the treasure chest must be opened. Yu Yi closed his eyes and opened the golden treasure chest. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, Primary Devouring. Hey? This luck is too good, right? Could it be that Uncle Snake is really my lucky god? When Yu Yi thought about how he was a black-handed person who doubted his life, his luck had changed dramatically since he signed the spiritual contract with Orochimaru, and his face suddenly looked strange. This idea is too dangerous. Yu Yi shook his head quickly and threw this idea out of his mind. Then, he looked at the new talent he had acquired. Primary Devouring. For creatures that have lost their lives, they can devour and absorb the most valuable things in their bodies through the air. Seeing this talent, Yu Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. In his previous life, he was a human, and although he was reborn as a snake in this life, Yu Yi had always been polite and indifferent to eating people, and had always refused. So, when Yakushi Kabuto forced Yu Yi to eat people, Yu Yi would rather return to Ryokai Cave than eat people. Of course, it was also because of eating people that this book was censored. And now, this newly acquired talent has solved Yu Yi's worries. After killing someone, Yu Yi can use the primary devouring talent to devour the most valuable thing in the person's body through the air. And in the ninja world, what is the most valuable thing in the ninja's body? It's not ordinary flesh and blood, nor is it ordinary cells. It's chakra, blood limit, and special cells, such as the cells of Senju Hashirama. Yu Yi looked at the system's personal information column, and he was more confident that he would become a shadow-level strongman within a year and take revenge on the snakes. System goal: help the host evolve into the infinite snake of the world. Current world: Naruto. Host: Yu Yi. Breed: White Python. Age: under 1 year old, complete body. Lifespan: 50 years. Devouring evolution gene: 2300/15000. Level: LV150. Language: Snake language. Talent: Primary Devouring, Intermediate Fire Affinity. Ability: Strengthen Fangs, Strengthen Skin. Comprehensive evaluation: the strength is comparable to that of ordinary Jonin, and he has a certain ability to protect himself in the ninja world, the infinite snake of the world has just begun. Follow the footsteps of the system and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. After checking, Yu Yi pondered for a moment. Now, he has a way to quickly improve his strength. That is, to complete the hidden serial tasks he just got. My life is in my own hands. The first stage of this task is to kill as many candidates and teachers as possible in the second round of the Chunin exam to disrupt this exam. Now that Yu Yi has the primary devouring talent, it is even easier. Thinking like this, Yu Yi continued to run towards the southeast. Death Forest. Looking around blankly, the forest is dense and the shadows of the trees are heavy. The dusk is bleak, the smoke is blurred, the autumn wind is rustling, and the fallen leaves are rustling. 2 men and 1 woman, as flexible as flying swallows, quickly shuttle between the tall branches. A boy in a hooded sweater, with a wild look on his face, walked in front and laughed. Great! If you want to challenge the limits of survival, you should come to this kind of place, right, Akamaru? A cute white puppy barked twice in response. Obviously, this boy is Inyazuka Kaiba. A Barame Shino, wearing sunglasses and with a serious face, advised in a calm tone. Don't be too proud, this is very dangerous. Only by moving forward carefully and avoiding all enemies can you be safest. Inyazuka Kaiba clearly didn't listen, and said indifferently. You who play with insects, don't come to teach me a lesson, I am the boss here. Hinata, who looked weak and had short hair, said weakly. But, I think what Shino said is not wrong. Inyazuka Kaiba was like a teenager in the rebellious period, with a face full of impatience. Especially when even the only girl in the team opposed him, it further stimulated Inyazuka Kaiba's male chauvinism, and he said unhappily. Alright. You guys are so annoying. Just when the group was playing and fighting, Inyazuka Kaiba and the white dog Akamaru suddenly stopped, and the two of them were in sync and sniffed the air with their noses together. Inyazuka Kaiba opened his arms and stopped the 2 people behind him, with a serious face, and said. Wait. Stop. Although Inyazuka Kaiba is usually unreliable, when he is serious, he is still a trustworthy partner and a reliable teammate who can trust his back. So Hinata and Abarame Shino did not hesitate at all and stopped immediately. Although Inyazuka Kaiba had just spoken rudely, at this moment, he accepted the advice of Abarame Shino and said to Hinata. Didn't you say to be careful to avoid the enemy? Hinata, can you see the situation 1 kilometer away in this direction? Hinata frowned slightly, then her face straightened, nodded, and said weakly. Let me try. White eyes. A warm current passed through, and the veins around Hinata's eyes bulged, and then the whole eye turned blue-white, and the blank pupil looked a little creepy. 100 meters. 500 meters. 1 kilometer. See it. A boy with red hair and a gourd on his back, with his back to her, crossed his chest with his hands. Someone is fighting. The little girl Shino put her ear to the ground, and she didn't know how she got the information, and said with a confident face. It sounds like there should be 6 people. Inyazuka Kaiba was not afraid, but showed an eager expression, saying. Okay. Let's go and have a look. However, this time, without waiting for Hinata and Abarame Shino to refute, Akamaru was like a madman, with his hair standing up, and his eyes looked to the other side with extreme fear. Hey, what's wrong, Akamaru? Inyazuka Kaiba felt very strange, the direction Akamaru was facing was clearly not the location where Hinata was investigating. Then, what surprised Inyazuka Kaiba even more was that Akamaru actually scared to pee. How could this happen? Inyazuka Kaiba's pupils suddenly shrank. Akamaru grew up with him, Inyazuka Kaiba knew Akamaru best, who was it that scared him to pee? Chapter 25. Inyazuka Kaiba and Akamaru have been growing up since they were young. He knows very well the character of Akamaru, a little white dog. It's probably not easy to be able to scare him to death. A drop of cold sweat fell from his forehead. Inyazuka Kaiba put away the smile on his face and said to Hinata in a solemn voice. Hinata, look in that direction and use your Byakugan to see where the sacred place is. Oh, okay. Hinata also knew that the current situation was strange and did not dare to delay at all, looking in the direction Inyazuka Kaiba was pointing. 100 meters. 500 meters. 1 kilometer. She saw it. A giant python as big as a hill. The 80-meter-long white giant python has a body that is thicker than a century-old tree. It is covered with hard scales from head to tail. Each scale is the size of a palm. Its sharp fangs are as sharp as knives, and its mouth is open and bloody. Even enough to swallow an elephant alive. Sudden. The giant white python stopped suddenly, raised its long neck, and its lantern-sized eyes burst out with golden light, looking sinisterly in the direction of Hinata and the others. She's been discovered. Ah! Hinata was frightened by Nato's frightening gaze. She screamed and trembled all over. She couldn't say a word. She closed her eyes directly and didn't dare to look in Nato's direction. She couldn't control her body. Shaking like a sieve. Seeing this, Inyazuka Kaiba grabbed Hinata's shoulders with both hands and asked with concern. Hinata, what exactly did you see? Girls are generally afraid of creatures like cockroaches, spiders, and snakes, let alone a huge white python like you yet? Hinata's face turned pale, but she finally recovered and said weakly. A huge white python. And he found us. What? Inyazuka Kaiba was shocked. If what Hinata said is true, it would be a disaster for their team. As the think tank of Team 8, Shino Aberame has become the backbone of the team at this time. She is not as scared as Hinata, nor is Kaiba Inyazuka losing her sense of proportion. Instead, she has a calm face and analyzes rationally. Don't panic. Even if the giant white python finds us, it will take a while to get here. The first thing we have to do now is how to avoid this crisis. Seeing that Inyazuka Kaiba and Hinata calmed down and looked over, Aberame Shino continued. Under normal circumstances, at this time, it would be the best choice for the three of us to escape separately. However, this is a special period during the second round of the Chunin exams. Once the three of us are separated, even if we escape this crisis, we will probably be defeated by people from other teams. So, under the sunglasses, Aberame Shino flashed a hint of wisdom and said. For the current plan, if you want to ensure the integrity of the team and avoid the attack of the white giant python, the best way is to divert the disaster eastward and attract the white giant python to other teams and let them replace it. We attract fire. Aberame Shino's plan was extremely difficult to come up with at this age. In the team, Hinata usually doesn't have any ideas, so of course there is no problem. Aberame Shino was afraid that Inyazuka Kaiba, who had always been at odds with her, would act as a leverage at some point and would not agree to life or death. Through her sunglasses, Shino Aberame stared closely at Inyazuka Kaiba, fearing that he would say no. Unexpectedly, Inyazuka Kaiba's reaction was beyond Shino Aberame's expectations. Inyazuka Kaiba suddenly closed his palms and said. Then what are you waiting for? Just do what the bug guy said and retreat quickly. Seeing Aberame Shino and Hinata looking at each other with surprise, as if they were recognizing themselves again, Inyazuka Kaiba curled his lips. He is not a fool. Akamaru was scared to death. How dare he be a bully? Isn't he impatient? The three reached a consensus and immediately headed to Gaara's team. As the distance approached, the three heard a mature man shouting. Little devil, come and accept your fate. Ninja technique. Ryuwa Senbon. Later, Hinata and the other three saw several umbrellas thrown high into the sky, and thousands of them, like a goddess scattering flowers, and like a violent storm, falling crazily towards the young man carrying the gourd below. What a terrifying offensive! Hinata and the other three were shocked. To be fair, if it were them, they would have to spend a lot of effort to avoid it. However, what shocked Hinata and the others was that the young man with the gourd on his back and the word love carved on his forehead seemed not to have seen all this. He still had his arms folded in front of his chest with an indifferent expression on his face. On the contrary, the ninja who took action smiled wildly with pride and said. Haha, this is a move with no blind spots, and under the control of my power, those thousand roots can definitely hit the target. Even Hinata and the other three looked shocked and confused after hearing this. But then, whether it was the ninja who took action or Hinata and the other three, their expressions changed drastically in the next moment. Boom! A burst of dust filled the air, and a layer of soil formed a perfect protective umbrella, blocking out the Senbon from the outside world. Gaara's joking voice came from inside. Oh? Is that all you can do? Then, under the horrified gazes of the ninja and Hinata, Gaara raised his right arm, a look of excitement and cruelty flashing deep in his eyes. Let me rain blood! Sand-bound coffin! In the other party's horrified eyes, the sand from under his feet was like a python, tightly wrapped around his body. Gaara was like an ant, clenching his fists suddenly, and said coldly. Sand waterfall funeral. bang. Along with the sound of broken bones, blood, from the ninja's body being torn into pieces, splashed like raindrops. Gaara was calm and raised his umbrella to block the blood rain outside without getting a single drop of it. Then, Gaara turned his eyes and looked at the Hinata trio, who did not hide their tracks, with a cold look, and said, "You, also want to blend into the rolling quicksand?" Just when Hinata and the other two were cold all over and at a loss. Boom! The ground suddenly began to shake violently, and even the surrounding trees were shaky, as if they would collapse at any time. Hiss! A deafening roar exploded like thunder, echoing in the air and entering everyone's ears. Everyone, including Gaara, stopped what they were doing and looked solemnly in the direction of the roar. Boom! 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 The ground was broken, and towering trees collapsed one after another. Then, a huge white and ferocious snake head suddenly rushed out from the depths of the forest, and a pair of snake eyes swept across everyone present. No matter whether it was Hinata's trio or Gaara's trio. At this moment, all beings were equal. Everyone seemed to be petrified, stunned. Chapter 26. Death Forest. For many years, this place was densely forested, quiet and mysterious. The towering trees rose from the ground and soared into the sky. The forest was entangled with ancient vines and was lush and green. Hiss! At this time, a huge roar came from the depths of the forest, breaking the long-term silence of the forest. Then, Gaara, Hinata and others heard a rustling sound of wind. Not long after, a huge snake head poked out of the forest and looked at everyone present. Kanjuro's eyes widened, with a look of horror on his face, and said, "My God! Is this still a snake?" What appeared in front of everyone was a giant snake that was as thick as 7 people hugging. The ferocious head alone was more than 1 meter long. Most of the body was in the forest. I don't know how long this white python is. Just the half of the body exposed in the forest is more than 20 meters long. Needless to say, this white python is naturally Yu Yi. Being stared at by Yu Yi, except for Gaara who was fearless, everyone else was a little scared. In front of Yu Yi, their small bodies were not enough to fill the gaps in his teeth. Yu Yi's long snake tongue kept stretching and retracting, and his 2 cold eyes flashed with cold light. He looked at Gaara and others as if he was looking at a meal on a plate, which made them feel cold. Temari's throat moved up and down, and she spitted hard, and said to Gaara beside her, "Gaara, let's retreat quickly." Gaara held an umbrella with one hand, as if he didn't hear it, and looked at Yu Yi coldly, saying, "It's just a beast, what's there to be afraid of?" Gaara's arrogance is naturally justified. But when Yu Yi heard these words, he felt very uncomfortable. He actually called me a beast in front of me? He was simply looking for death. Yu Yi's snake pupils were filled with bloodthirsty and ferocious light. He swallowed and spit out his snake tongue, and you could vaguely see his mouth full of sharp teeth like a knife, looking at Gaara with a fierce look. Seeing this, Kankuro and Temari's faces changed, and their hearts trembled, and they secretly said, "Oh no!" Hiss! Yu Yi let out a long hiss and crawled towards Gaara. Until then, Yu Yi's huge snake body was truly exposed to everyone's vision. 30 meters, 40 meters, 80 meters. The snake body passed through the heavy forest, and Yu Yi pounced on Gaara like a gust of wind, with a bloody mouth full of sharp teeth, biting Gaara in the face. Especially this bloody mouth had just bitten some unknown candidates to death not long ago, and now you can vaguely see blood, and a fishy wind blows in your face. Unlike others who were terrified, Gaara was not frightened but happy. Gaara raised his right hand, a trace of bloodthirsty and cruel eyes flashed through the depths of his eyes, and he sneered. Sand-binding prison. The gravel flew up and down around Gaara, like a dancing elf, like a falling waterfall, and like the raging sand in the desert, surrounding and climbing up from all directions, clinging to Yu Yi's body, as if to wrap Yu Yi in the gravel and then strangle him like he did to the ninja just now. Seeing that the gravel had wrapped most of Yu Yi's head, Kanjiro breathed a sigh of relief and glanced at Gaara, secretly saying, "It's worthy of being called Shura Gaara." But as soon as this thought came up, Kanjiro's face changed drastically. Hiss! A deafening roar of anger suddenly rose, and a terrifying breath swept out from Yu Yi's body. The gravel in the sky suddenly dissipated, revealing the snake head that was so close. Gaara's eyes flickered, and without thinking, he directly used the sand shield. The gravel turned and turned into heavy armor to protect Gaara. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Yu Yi's snake head suddenly turned and bit Kanjiro beside Gaara. Yu Yi's sharp teeth were strengthened, and the incident happened suddenly. Kanjuro didn't expect that Yi would let Gaara go, but suddenly turned the gun to deal with him. Looking at Gaara wrapped in heavy gravel, Kanjuro didn't know whether to say 1,000 damn words in his heart. Isn't this a pitfall for teammates? Kanjuro's skills are all on the puppet. In a hurry, he didn't even have time to release the puppet. He could only watch Yi pounce in front of him and open his huge mouth to swallow him. Kankuro. Seeing this, Temari immediately died, waving a giant fan as high as a person in her hand, and the wind as sharp as a knife blew towards Yi. Damn monster, get out of here. However, these fierce winds that could break giant trees in half only left shallow blood marks on Yi's snake body, and could not stop Yi's killing at all. Crack! Yi's huge bite force instantly crushed the bones of Kanjuro's upper body. Yi opened his mouth and spit, and the unrecognizable Kanjuro fell heavily to the ground like a kite with a broken string. Then his head turned around on the ground for a few times, his eyes wide open, staring at Gaara's direction, as if accusing him. You are such a pit. Yi's results were amazing. He solved Kanjuro in just 5 minutes after entering the field. This scene made Hinata and the other two gasp. Although Inyazuka Kaiba was usually wild, at this moment, his legs trembled like a sieve, and he trembled and said, I think, while those people from the sand village attract the attention of the monster, let's retreat quickly. Hinata clenched her pink fists, her palms full of sweat, nodded, and said, I agree. Seeing that both teammates had an idea, Aberame Shino glanced at Yi, the huge white python, with a nervous look, and said, There is no time to lose, let's retreat quickly. The three people and the dog touched the ground with their toes, and jumped over the branches of the big tree like a dragonfly skimming the water, and ran out at a fast speed. Yi's snake eyes glanced at them, and a grim smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, thinking, Can you run away? The three people and the dog heard the huge roar coming from behind, and they were suddenly cold all over. They didn't dare to look back at all. They shot out like an arrow from a string, and the sound of breaking the wind sounded in the air. However, they were fast, and Yi was faster than them. There was a whistling sound from above, and Yi's huge tail fell from the sky like a giant tree. In the rumbling sound, the branches blocking the way turned into powder. Hinata and the other two cooperated tacitly. At the critical moment, the three of them separated and dodged in different directions. Boom! The giant tail fell from the sky like a giant hammer, and the terrifying air waves were lifted up layer by layer. Hinata, who was closest to him, was hit directly on the back by the strong wind. As if she was hit hard, she vomited a large mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Chapter 27. Seeing that Shino Aberame and Kaiba Inyazuka were still trying to escape, Yi's eyes flashed, and with a sweep of his giant tail, he gently lifted up the limp Hinata and flew towards him. Hina. Seeing this, Kaiba Inyazuka was shocked and angry, and he was so angry that he wanted to skin Yi alive. Seeing that Kaiba Inyazuka wanted to turn around and go into danger again, Shino Aberame immediately stopped him and said in a deep voice. Wait! Don't be impulsive! How can I not be impulsive? Kaiba Inyazuka was furious, grabbed Shino Aberame's collar with one hand, and angrily asked, That monster took Hinata away. How can you run away with a clear conscience? Shino Aberame wore sunglasses to cover his eyes, so Kaiba Inyazuka couldn't figure out what this friend was thinking. Aberame Shino smiled knowingly and said. I never said I wouldn't save Hinata, it's just. Just what? Inyazuka Kaiba was so angry that he gritted his teeth. It was already this critical moment, why was this bug-playing guy still so hesitant? It was really frustrating. Aberame Shino ignored Inyazuka Kaiba's anger, turned around, and said calmly to Temari who was collecting Kankuro's body and immersed in sadness. You two from the sand village, and the two friends from the rain village over there, we can see the current situation. This monster will not want us to escape. For now, our three teams will temporarily form an alliance and deal with this monster together. Do you have any objections? The two rain village ninjas came to deal with Gaara before, but the captain was killed by Gaara when they met. Now a stronger python has appeared. Of course, they agree with Aberame Shino's opinion. We have no objection. Aberame Shino still aimed her eyes at Temari and Gaara, these two are the key combat power. So, what about you? Temari gently wiped Kankuro's face with her jade hand, making him close his unwilling eyes, stand up, and endure the back of his companion's leaving. He put on a strong look on his face and said in a sonorous and powerful voice. We have no objection. As for why he didn't ask Gaara? Because at this time, Gaara and Yi fought again. Quicksand waterfall. Accompanied by Gaara's bloodthirsty laughter, in the shocked eyes of the others, the environment within 500 meters in front of Gaara suddenly changed. Boom boom boom. Strands of quicksand flowed rapidly, like a stream flowing into the sea, and began to meander and swirl. The soil, weeds, and towering trees on the quicksand seemed to be sucked into a black hole, without any power to fight back, and were swept into it by the gurgling quicksand, and never saw their figures again. Only the quicksand vortex, which was spinning bigger and bigger, spread to Yi's body, as if to replicate the previous success and swallow him up as well. At first, the quicksand vortex only affected 100 square meters. But with Gaara's unremitting chakra delivery, this range increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. 200 square meters. 500 square meters. 1000 square meters. In the horrified eyes of Aberame Shino and others, a small forest disappeared from sight, and what came back was a quicksand vortex like a lake. Gaara stared at Yi with a slightly red eye, which was not easy to notice if you didn't look carefully. Although Gaara and Kanjuro had a bad relationship at this time, they had feelings for each other after raising a dog for a long time, not to mention a partner who had been together for several years. Even if Gaara was as indifferent as he was, he felt a little throbbing at the moment of Kanjuro's death. Blood for blood, tooth for tooth. Sandfall burial. The quicksand rushed up into the sky, with great momentum, wild energy, and shocking sweeping. Who dares to block the long road ahead? What if there are millions of corpses? Use sand as a coffin and bury this beast. The quicksand in the sky was like someone pulling open a curtain, covering the upper body of the huge white python and pulling him into the bottomless vortex. Did it work? Whether it was Aberame Shino or Temari, everyone raised their hearts to their throats, and their eyes did not turn away, for fear of missing it. Unfortunately, no one noticed the playful smile on Yi's lips. When Yi's upper body was pulled into the quicksand vortex, before Gaara could make any move, Yi's whole body suddenly burned. There's a problem. As the brain trust of Team 8, Shino Aberame's eyes moved, knowing that something was wrong. She scattered her body and turned into a dense swarm of insects, saving the depressed Hinata from the snake's tail and flying far away. Just a moment after Shino Aberame left, Yi's body burned more fiercely, and the high temperature condensed, turning the flames all over his body into a bucket of the most powerful explosives. Then, while Temari and others looked at him in shock, the flames burning on Yi's body suddenly exploded. Boom! It was like a rocket bursting, with gravel flying and sound waves rolling. Hurry, get down! Inyazuka Kaiba was shocked, and just as he gave the reminder, he took Akamaru into his arms and lay on the ground. Hey! The wind waves were like a tsunami, like a rushing river, spreading all over the place, and the sand was raised to a height of more than 10 meters, which was extremely terrifying. When the wind dissipated, Inyazuka Kaiba stuck out his head from the quicksand, and then climbed out of his messy body. Then, Aberame Shino, Hinata, Temari, Gaara and others also appeared one by one. Seeing as if it had been swept by a dozen Category 1 hurricanes, leaving only a messy forest, Inyazuka Kaiba murmured. Is that terrible monster finally dead? But Inyazuka Kaiba didn't notice that Aberame Shino and Hinata looked shocked and kept winking at him. As for Akamaru in his arms, when he saw the huge figure behind Inyazuka Kaiba, he fainted gorgeously. When Inyazuka Kaiba was completely unaware, Nato's huge snake tail swept over thousands of troops, lifting up waves of dust stones. It's hard to beat. Click, snap. There was an explosion of bones breaking inch by inch, and the bones pierced into the internal organs. The terrifying power swept in, directly crushing Inyazuka Kaiba's internal organs into dregs. Inyazuka Kaiba was like a broken bag, drawing a beautiful arc in the air and hitting Aberame Shino and Hinata hard. Seeing the concerned looks on his companions' faces, Inyazuka Kaiba raised his arms, wanting to say a handsome farewell. It's not a manly way to cry. Pity. Inyazuka Kaiba's arm was only raised halfway before it collapsed helplessly. In the gradually blurred vision, Hinata's tears fell. Inyazuka Kaiba forced out a smile and said weakly. Don't cry, it's so hard. Before the word look could be said, Inyazuka Kaiba's last breath disappeared and he died completely. I was a little tangled when I wrote this chapter. The most helpless part of fan fiction is that the death of the original character will affect the performance of the book. Especially since this book tends to be dark, this is even more tangled. Many times I can't let it go. Hands and feet, whether you support or oppose, please leave a message in the comment area, and the author will take the time to correct it. Chapter 28. Inyazuka Kaiba died. In less than 10 minutes, another person died. Except for Gaara, everyone else felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts, sweeping through their bodies and rushing straight to their heads. Their bodies were stiff and unable to move, and their brains were blank. Because they were not sure whether they would be the next to die. This fear, this despair, like a thorn in the flesh, deeply affected everyone present. Especially the two Mist Village ninjas who had little presence. At this time there was only one thought in their minds. Run! 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 The two ninjas directly tore up the alliance agreement they had reached with Aberame Shino before, turned around and fled for their lives. Seeing this, even the usually calm Aberame Shino couldn't help but curse. These two idiots! They are not idiots. If everyone works together, even if they can't kill the huge white python in front of them, they can delay time until the rescue of the invigilators. Shino Aberame didn't believe that the Konoha village, as the organizer, would not have tools to monitor this place. Such a big thing happened here, and it is likely that the Hokage has already been alarmed. As long as they work together and delay time, victory is in sight. But if they are scattered and run away separately, no one will escape. Sure enough. Things developed just as Shino Aberame thought. The two ninjas from the Hidden Mist village had just run less than a kilometer, and they jumped lightly from the tree branches and landed on the crown of a towering tree. Before they could stand firmly, they suddenly felt the tree under their feet shook slightly, and a hissing snake sound came from below. It's over. The two Hidden Mist village ninjas were horrified. Just as this thought came to their minds, the whole tree was suddenly torn apart, and a white python like a giant tree soared into the sky. Before the two Yuyin came to their senses, Yuyi's huge snake head had already appeared in front of them quickly. The bloody mouth closed, and the terrifying bite force burst out. With the sound of bone breaking from his mouth, Yuyi opened his mouth and spit. Two corpses that were completely inhuman fell from the sky and fell heavily to the ground. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a genin and obtaining 2000 points of swallowing evolution genes. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a genin and obtaining 1700 points of swallowing evolution genes. Yuyi ignored the system prompt and continued to fight. At this time, only Gaara, Temari, Aberame Shino, and Hinata who was seriously injured were left on the battlefield. In fact, there were only 3 people with combat power, and the situation was extremely serious. Perhaps it was due to the stimulation of Kankuro's death, or perhaps it was the bloody smell on the battlefield that aroused Gaara's desire to kill, and Gaara actually took the initiative to start the tail beast transformation. The right arm was covered with layers of gravel, becoming thicker and deformed. Soon it was as thick as an adult's thigh. The right palm was even more changed, forming a beast-like claw. The white of the right eye was as black as ink, and the pupil was contracted and vertical, bursting with a bloodthirsty and terrifying light like a beast. It was the first time that Shino Aberame and Hinata saw Gaara in this form, and they were shocked. Shino Aberame massaged her temples with both hands, and wailed in her heart. Where did this monster come from? Gaara ignored the strange looks of others, and swung his right hand forward. Thousands of gravels turned into a terrifying barrage like a machine gun, bang bang bang, and shot straight at Yuyi who turned back to kill him. Sand shuriken! But who knew? Yuyi rushed all the way, without dodging or evading, like a violent armored vehicle rushing, destroying everything it passed, with broken wood and stone chips flying everywhere, but Yuyi continued to move forward without any awareness, and the light in his snake eyes became stronger and stronger. Ding ding ding! Ding ding ding! Hundreds of sand shurikens, like heavy rain hitting banana leaves, fell on Yuyi's body, as if hitting a hard steel plate, without leaving any scars on Yuyi's body, but splashing and hitting the nearby big trees, directly penetrating the giant trees. Mess! Aberame Shino and Temari looked at each other. At this critical moment, they did not dare to hide their secrets, and took out their most proud ninjutsu in the hope of severely injuring Yuyi. Temari put her thumb to her mouth, bit her silver teeth, tore the epidermis, and drew her thumb on the giant fan as high as a person, and quickly formed seals with both hands. Spiritual summoning technique. Accompanied by a puff of green smoke, a black and white weasel appeared, holding a strange weapon that looked like an axe or a sickle. Temari held the weapon in her hand, and her confidence was instantly overflowing. At this time, a Baramashino attacked at the same time. Two white hands like those of a girl stretched out from her sleeves, and black insects the size of ants rushed out of her sleeves one after another, covering the back of her jade-like hands, and rushed straight towards Yu Yi with the buzzing sound of insects. Yu Yi didn't care at first and let these insects approach. But the next moment, these insects exploded in mid-air. Puffs of orange smoke spread in the air, and at the same time, the strong and pungent smell of sulfur rushed towards Yu Yi's nose like a tsunami. Yu Yi never thought that one day he would hate the smell of sulfur so much. To make an analogy, it's like humans hate shit. And now, the sulfur gas spread out in front of Yu Yi, just like a pile of rice fields in front of him. Although sulfur will not cause any harm to Yu Yi, just as humans do not want to be covered by rice fields, Yu Yi does not want to touch these sulfur. Yu Yi's body, which was rushing forward, suddenly stagnated, as if he was electrocuted, and his body was stiff for a moment. A Baramashino put his hands in his pockets, and a ray of wisdom flashed under his sunglasses. This is the fart bug I have kept for a long time. The fart smells like sulfur, which is the most restraining for snakes. Well done, brother with sunglasses. Temari gave a Baramashino a thumbs up, but a trace of fear and solemnity flashed in the depths of her eyes. However, now is not the time for internal strife. The most urgent task is to kill the monster in front of him. With her mind racing, Temari threw out the strange weapon in her hand and shouted. Wind style. Tornado hurricane. A huge tornado swept over like a natural disaster, looking like a huge funnel, spinning violently, and rolling uncontrollably on the ground. As it passed, deep traces were plowed out on the ground, and the scattered broken trees and fallen leaves were all swept into the sky, and then torn into pieces by the sharp gale. Chapter 29. A huge tornado that reached the sky roared in, blowing up gusts of wind, and blew fiercely in all directions, with a wind speed faster than that of an ordinary typhoon. The towering trees along the way were cut into several pieces by these fierce winds and fell down. Of course, it also blew away the disgusting sulfur smell of Yu Yi. But at this moment, even if Yu Yi wanted to avoid it, it was too late. The biting cold wind, accompanied by a strong airflow, rushed towards Yu Yi from all directions like a knife. He was like a piece of pork in a meat grinder, and there was no escape. Seeing this, Temari's eyes flashed with a trace of joy of revenge, and sneered. Damn evil beast, go to hell and be buried with Kanjuro. Swish! Swish! The strong wind whistled in the air, and gravel flew everywhere. The dust was like a curtain, the earth shook, and the wind and clouds lost their color. The tornado, like a raging wave, intertwined into a dense spider web, blocking a mile around Yu Yi. The knife-like gale blew on Yu Yi's huge snake body, tearing off his thick stratum corneum, tearing open his hard scales, leaving scratches of varying depths and lengths on his body. Blood spurted out like a water column. Yu Yi seemed to have just crawled out of a big dye vat, his whole body was covered in blood, and there was no intact place above or below. In severe cases, his skin was torn and his flesh was bloody, which looked extremely terrifying. Wind escape, worthy of being the strongest cutting ability among several chakra affinity. Especially after Temari summoned the summoned beast, it was even more powerful. She actually performed a ninjutsu comparable to A level, and severely injured Yu Yi with one move. However, this also angered Yu Yi. Looking down at the injuries on his body, a trace of vigorous killing intent flashed in Yu Yi's eyes. It seems that the smooth sailing during this period of time made him subconsciously underestimate the enemy when facing an opponent weaker than himself. If he had known earlier, he would have killed Temari first and cut the Gordian knot, and he would not have suffered such injuries now. Yu Yi is not a perfect person, he also has shortcomings. But fortunately, Yu Yi has an advantage that he can recognize the situation in time, correct his attitude in time, and change himself. Concealing his underestimation of the enemy in his heart, Yu Yi suddenly raised his snake head, with fire burning in his eyes. He endured the severe pain from his body, and his snake body bowed, like a spring suddenly contracted, accumulating strength, and then like a bowstring loosened, the whole body shot out like an arrow from the string. Whoosh! A thick black shadow broke through the air and attacked, and there was a burst of air explosion. It was extremely sharp, carrying 1,000 pounds of force, and slashed down at Temari in mid-air. So fast! The pupils of Gaara and the other four shrank into needles, and the whole person was suddenly shivering. Unfortunately, neither Gaara and the others nor Temari, the person involved, had time to react at this moment. Because in their original concept, Yu Yi was seriously injured. According to common sense, he should retreat when faced with difficulties and should not continue to fight with them. Unfortunately, Yu Yi's thinking was different from that of ordinary people, which was beyond their expectations. A bloody mouth opened wide, and its teeth were like knives and swords, extremely cold and sharp, falling towards Temari head-on. Under Yu Yi's terrifying bite force, he bit Temari in half, and the summoned beast in her hand could not escape the disaster and was swallowed into his mouth. Crack! 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 Accompanied by a creepy grinding sound, Yu Yi opened his mouth and spit out. The upper body of Temari, which was no longer in human form, and her summoned beast, stained with Yu Yi's mouth full of saliva, fell to the ground like a meteor. When Temari was about to fall to the ground, Gaara appeared below like a ghost and caught Temari's remains. Gaara looked down and found that Temari was completely silent. It was as if a string was broken in his heart, and the killing intent in his heart was like a raging wave. Gaara didn't know why he was sad about Temari's death, but he didn't need to know. Die! The tailed beast's right arm stretched out like rubber, carrying Gaara's shocking anger, vowing to catch Yu Yi. Yu Yi's eyes flashed with contempt. If Gaara used the technique of pretending to sleep and awakened the one-tailed Shikaku, there was no need to say anything. Yu Yi turned around and ran. Yu Yi opened his mouth wide, sparks and flames swirled out. Like a spark that spread across the prairie, the flames condensed into a hot fireball in the air, which directly blew off Gaara's tailed beast arm. In the midst of the dust, the fireball, which had shrunk by half, continued to move forward and rolled towards Gaara. Sand armor. Without any hesitation, Gaara covered his body with a layer of gravel, directly blocking the fireball. Bang! The flames went out, leaving only a crack on the gravel. Just when Gaara was happy that his absolute defense could easily withstand Yu Yi's attack, he suddenly heard a whoosh sound of breaking wind. Before Gaara could react, he was whipped away by Yu Yi's huge tail, along with the sand armor on his body. Bang! 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 Gaara, who was whipped away, broke 3 towering trees in succession before he barely landed on the ground. The sand armor on his body was already riddled with holes, and Gaara shook his body, and the sand armor turned into endless dust and dissipated. Gaara just moved a little, and his body felt a sharp pain. He felt that several ribs were broken in his body, and he couldn't even stand up. Seeing that Gaara had lost his fighting power, Yu Yi did not kill him. After all, Yu Yi wanted to keep Gaara alive and let the Akatsuki organization take away the tailed beast in his body. When the 9 tailed beasts gathered and summoned the 10 tails, it would be Yu Yi's harvest night. No more nonsense. Yu Yi repelled Gaara with one tail and immediately turned around to deal with a bear Meishino. But who knew that a bear Meishino was worthy of being the think tank of Team 8? When she saw that the situation was not good, she immediately abandoned Gaara and ran away with Hinata without looking back. This is a mobile ATM. How could Yu Yi let him go? Go to hell! With a roar, a surging fireball spewed out of Yu Yi's mouth and attacked a bear Meishino's back. However, at this time, a steady voice came. Water escape. Water tornado technique. Yu Yi suddenly raised his head, and his pupils suddenly shrank into needles. But Kakashi came from a distance, leaping into the air like a rock spreading its wings, and stepped out with one foot. In front of him, where there was nothing, a fountain suddenly emerged, turning into a huge dragon head carrying Kakashi and in silence, easily extinguished Yu Yi's big fireball. In the curling steam of the big water extinguishing the fire, Kakashi landed on the ground as light as a swallow, half squatting on the ground, looking at Yu Yi with a pair of sharp pupils. Chapter 30. Kakashi. When he saw his figure, Yu Yi's eyes suddenly fixed. Yu Yi was annoyed in his heart. It was all because he was too involved in the battle just now. He didn't pay attention to the surrounding movements and didn't even notice Kakashi approaching here. Thinking of this, Yu Yi noticed that there was another person approaching quickly in the thermal energy sensing. Boom! Suddenly, from the top of his head, there was a terrible sound of gas explosion, like the roar of an airplane, startling countless birds in the forest. Yu Yi raised his head suddenly. But he saw that in the cold and clear night sky, a human-shaped blue meteor fell from the sky. In an instant, it seemed that even the thick dark clouds in the sky were cut by the blue meteor. The dark clouds in the sky were torn in half like thin paper, and the blue human-shaped meteor shot down like a spear. It's Might Guy. If the ninjas in the ninja world were ranked, Might Guy would definitely be ranked in the top 10. Yu Yi's soul was in a state of panic, and he immediately gathered his mind and fled to the depths of the forest like a fly. He was just a little bit away from hiding in the dense forest and escaping from Might Guy and Kakashi's pursuit with the help of the complex terrain inside. Unfortunately, Yu Yi's dodging speed was too slow compared to Might Guy. Might Guy's flying kick contained a terrifying force that could split mountains and rocks, and directly kicked out bursts of sonic booms, breaking the atmosphere and releasing countless shock waves like white mist. Li Lianhua. Even though Yu Yi's body was strong and his scales were hard, he seemed so powerless in front of the blue beast that opened the 8 gates. Boom! The scales could not even hold out for a second, and were kicked to pieces. The muscular body was bursting with blood and bones. Yu Yi's huge body, which was 80 meters long and weighed hundreds of tons, was completely powerless under the foot of the tiny blue beast. The earth sank, cracking rocks and breaking soil. With Yu Yi as the center, a deep pit appeared, more than 10 meters deep. Yu Yi was directly stepped into the pit by Might Guy, his bones were broken, scales were scattered all over the ground, and blood mixed with meat was flying, looking extremely embarrassed. With Yu Yi's current strength as a Jonin, not to mention that Might Guy had a deliberate plan, he caught Yu Yi off guard. Even if they were in a head-on battle, Yu Yi would not have the slightest chance of winning. It hurts. It hurts so much. Yu Yi could feel that the bones of his 40-meter snake body had been broken, and the remaining 40-meter snake body was unconscious. It was equivalent to being amputated at the waist. This was the most serious injury Yu Yi had suffered since his rebirth and travel. Sensing Might Guy's footsteps approaching, Yu Yi knew that he was no match for Might Guy now, so he quickly closed his eyes, restrained his breathing, and lowered his heartbeat. Every winter, snakes hibernate and enter a state of suspended death. And now, in order to escape a disaster, Yu Yi was blessed with a spiritual heart and learned it by himself, and also entered a similar suspended death. Might Guy was full of violent and ferocious blue chakra, just like a human-shaped beast, exuding a fierce breath like a prehistoric beast, which made Yu Yi in suspended death feel palpitations, and kept praying in his heart that this plague god would leave quickly. Do you ask Yu Yi if he was moved? Dare not move! Dare not move! Dare not move! Might Guy was obviously very confident in himself. After seeing Yu Yi's injuries, he saw that he closed his eyes and didn't breathe at all. He thought that Yu Yi had been kicked to death by him, without any doubt. Might Guy put away the 8 gates, shook his hair, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a row of teeth, shining, and said to Kakashi. Kakashi, look at how I did. Kakashi ignored his self-conceit, helped Abarame Shino and Hinata up, and asked with concern. Are you all okay? Kakashi's questioning, like an elder, made the two of them feel like they had found the organization, and they could finally let go of the worries they had been holding up. Hey, Kakashi, did you hear what I said? Might Guy saw that he was ignored, and walked over carelessly, with a look on his face that said, Come and praise me quickly. Kakashi glanced at him, and the corners of his mouth under the mask twitched slightly. He knew that if he didn't say something, Might Guy would definitely continue to pester him with his personality, so he had to say against his will. You are awesome. Of course not. Might Guy shook his hair, raised his thumb, and the row of teeth exposed made Kakashi's eyes hurt. He said with a proud face. I am the blue beast of Konoha. At this time, Abarame Shino and Hinata finally came back to their senses from the nightmare experience. Abarame Shino took a deep breath, swept away the shocking killing of Yu Yi in her mind, and asked in a deep voice. Teacher Kakashi, Teacher Might Guy, why are you here? Abarame Shino was obviously asking knowingly, but it also saved Kakashi from the awkward chat. Kakashi looked at Abarame Shino with approval. It was really precious that he could recover calmness so quickly. Seeing a hint of shock on Hinata's face, Kakashi explained in a gentle voice. Don't worry, there was a problem with the exam. As far as we know, Konoha's S-level rebel Orochimaru sneaked into the Death Forest. His purpose is currently unknown, but in a short period of time, he caused a large number of casualties among the candidates, so the Hokage sent the two of us to investigate the situation. Kakashi pointed at Yu Yi who was motionless and said. Obviously, this white giant python is Orochimaru's summoning beast. It attacked you, obviously with Orochimaru's instructions. Having said so much, in short, everything is Orochimaru's fault. If Orochimaru knew that he had taken the blame for Yu Yi again, would he be moved to tears? Shino Abarame pondered for a moment and asked the most critical question. Teacher Kakashi, will the second round of the Chunin exam continue? Of course. In Shino Abereme's surprised eyes, Kakashi continued, "This is what the third Hokage meant." Might Guy was annoyed and waved his hand, saying anxiously, "Okay, Kakashi, let's stop chatting, we still have to find Orochimaru's trace." Hearing this, Kakashi remembered the mission this time, and said nothing more, and went deep into the forest with Might Guy. Obviously, they were going to find the mastermind behind this time. After they left, Shino Aberame and Hinata did not stay any longer, fearing that the bloody smell here would attract wild beasts in the forest. They picked up the body of Kaiba Inyazuka and left quickly. Half an hour after they left, in the deep pit kicked out by Might Guy, a huge snake head sneakily poked out, and Yu Yi breathed a sigh of relief. "Hey, I can finally go." Chapter 31. Hidden Mission, My Fate is in My Own Hands. Rare. First stage mission, destroy the second round of the Chunin exam in Konoha village as much as possible. Completed. Mission description, as the snake of all worlds, you should act recklessly and lawless. Kill as many candidates and teachers as possible who are participating in the exam. The more important the original characters you kill, the higher the score. Under review. Kill important characters in the original work, Inyazuka Kaiba, Temari, Kankuro, and Kabuto Yakushi. Final score, 46, out of 100. Host, do you want to settle? When Yu Yi saw the pitiful score of 46, he felt like crying. This is not even the passing line. Perhaps, if Yu Yi had taken the pressure of Orochimaru's arrival and directly killed Sasuke and Naruto, perhaps this score would have soared like a rocket. Of course, this is just a thought. If Yu Yi really did that, he would have to face the wrath of Orochimaru, and it is hard to say whether he can still live to this day. What a pity. Yu Yi took a look at his current body. The damage caused by Might Guy was too serious. Now even crawling has become difficult. Nearly half of his body has no feeling and has become a burden. Now, Yu Yi has to put his hope on the system reward to see if he can get the ability to heal his injuries. Thinking of this, Yu Yi gritted his teeth and made a decision. Confirm the settlement. Congratulations to the host for getting 1 black iron treasure chest, 1 bronze treasure chest, 1 silver treasure chest, and 1 gold treasure chest. Seeing that he could get 4 treasure chests even if he didn't pass the test, Yu Yi felt his heart twitch for a moment. Heartache. I missed 100 million. Yu Yi shook his head, knowing that now is not the time to be sad. After all, no one can say whether Kakashi and Might Guy will suddenly turn back. To be honest, Yu Yi was really traumatized by Might Guy. When I watched the anime before, I didn't have such a real feeling, but after being there, Yu Yi found out how painful it was to be an enemy of Might Guy. With 1 kick, Yu Yi was kicked out seriously injured. If Yu Yi was just an ordinary summoned beast, he might have been kicked to pieces by Might Guy, then the book would have directly ushered in the grand finale. Even now, Yu Yi still has lingering fears when he recalls that shocking kick. Get stronger. I must get stronger. Yu Yi has a strong desire to survive, and he doesn't want to be like today again, facing Might Guy without even the power to fight back. Thinking of this, Yu Yi looked at the 4 treasure chests of different levels. In the spirit of saving the good stuff for the last, Yu Yi opened the black iron treasure chest first. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the language, human language, only for Naruto. Originally, Yu Yi didn't have any hope for the things in the black iron treasure chest, but he didn't expect to have an unexpected surprise. Human language. Even though it was just the human language of the Naruto world, Yu Yi felt like he had found a treasure. How can you communicate with others and pretend to be cool happily if you can't speak human language? Excited, Yu Yi opened the next 3 treasure chests in succession. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, Primary Earth Affinity. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the talent, Intermediate Earth Affinity. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the skill, Primary Regeneration. Yu Yi estimated that the Earth Affinity and Fire Affinity were similar, and they were not the most urgent at present, so he put them aside first and focused on the newly acquired skills. Primary Regeneration, by devouring a large number of organisms or consuming a large amount of one's own physical strength, one can recover from injuries by oneself. The recovery time is determined by the severity of the injury and the level of the skill. This is what I need most now. Seeing this, Yu Yi's eyes lit up. Yu Yi glanced at the system's personal information and summarized it. System goal: help the host evolve into the infinite snake of all worlds. Current world, Naruto. Host, Yi. Species, white python. Age, under 1 year old, perfect form. Lifespan, 50 years. Evolutionary gene swallowing, 3000/16000. Level, LV160. Language, snake language, human language, only for Naruto. Talent, primary swallowing, intermediate fire affinity, intermediate earth affinity. Abilities, strengthen fangs, strengthen skin, primary regeneration. Overall evaluation, as long as you have enough physical strength, or swallow a lot of food, you will be invincible at the level of ordinary Jonin. The infinite snake of the world has just begun. Follow the footsteps of the system and become a creature at the top of the food chain in the Naruto world first. These days, Yi has killed several important characters in the original work, and also killed other unknown candidates from the small ninja village, absorbed their chakra, and upgraded by 10 levels. This is the first time that the system's evaluation is so high. It seems that there is still room for exploration in the ability of primary regeneration. Yi's eyes showed a thoughtful look. It's just helpless. At present, it's difficult for a good cook to cook without rice. At present, let alone digging deep into the potential of this ability, it's even difficult to use it. Yi can't even crawl now, let alone hunt, so he can only rely on consuming his own physical strength to regenerate. However, when using the skill of primary regeneration, Yi really understood what it meant to consume a lot of physical strength. Instantly, Yi felt like a balloon with a hole in it, and the physical strength in his body leaked out like a dam. In the blink of an eye, Yi didn't even have the strength to lift his head. He felt that his whole body was hollowed out and he was too weak. However, the consumption was great, and the effect gradually emerged. Yi felt an itchy and tingling sensation at the torn wound on his body. The wound was being sutured bit by bit at a slow and firm speed. Even the bones that were broken by Might Guy's kick were regrowing new bones to put the dislocated bones back in place. However, it would obviously take a long time for Yi to fully recover. Due to excessive physical consumption, Yi felt dizzy and sleepy. He couldn't hold on for a while and fainted with his head on the ground. The night was dark, and it made people have good dreams. Compared to Yi who was sleeping soundly, the Hokage building was brightly lit and working overtime. In the corridor, ordinary clerical staff walked around holding documents, and the Anbu wearing black robes and masks were full of evil spirits, watching the inside and outside of the house vigilantly to avoid accidents. Kakashi came to the Sandame's office and knocked on the door. Dong! 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 An old and vigorous voice came from inside the house. Come in. Kakashi pushed the door open, and the Sandame Hokage turned his back to him, and the chair suddenly turned around. The Sandame Hokage had a pipe in his mouth, blowing clouds and puffing out smoke. A pair of eyes full of wisdom fell on Kakashi through the smoke, and said in a deep voice. Kakashi, what happened to the investigation I asked you and Might Guy to do? Chapter 32. Konoha Village, Hokage Building. Kakashi saluted, bowed slightly, and said. Hokage-sama, after Metkai and I entered the Forest of Death, we immediately killed a giant white python that was killing candidates wantonly, and rescued the eldest daughter of the Hinata family. After that, we met the seriously injured Anko, and through her mouth it was learned that Orochimaru had stayed in the Death Forest for a long time and his current whereabouts are unknown. The Sandame narrowed his eyes, lost in thought. He had a long pipe in his mouth and smoked for a long time. Kakashi did not dare to interrupt the Sandame's train of thought and stood silently, standing straight with his back like a gun. Call. The Sandame spat out a mouthful of cloud, and seeing Kakashi's solemn face, not moving at all, he smiled slightly and said. Sorry, when we get older, it's easy to recall things from the past. How dare Kakashi say anything wrong? After all, he also understood that Orochimaru was once the most proud disciple of the old man in front of him. Even if they turned against each other later, there was still a complicated relationship between the two parties that was constantly being cut and messed up. Seeing Kakashi not answering, the Sandame was not surprised, but suddenly asked. Naruto and Sasuke, how are their injuries now? Kakashi's face tightened, knowing that this was what the Sandame cared about most, so he said. Naruto is in good condition. There is a lot of Nine Tails chakra in his body. He is recovering from his injuries very quickly. He will be able to get out of bed in about a month. It's just Sasuke. Hearing this, the Sandame raised his eyebrows and asked. What's wrong Sasuke? The Sandame and Uchiha Itachi once reached a tacit understanding. Uchiha Itachi was responsible for exterminating the clan and then leaving the village with all the bad reputation. The Sandame had the responsibility to protect Sasuke's healthy growth and prevent him from dying midway. Therefore, the Sandame was extremely concerned about Sasuke's situation. Kakashi looked troubled and said, "According to the doctor in the medical class, Sasuke's situation is not optimistic. He was first cursed by Orochimaru and became seriously ill. He should have been recovering for a while, but he was seriously injured by the white giant python. Life hangs on a thread." After overnight emergency treatment by doctors from the medical team, Sasuke was finally rescued from Yama's gate, but he also suffered serious sequelae. Unless we find Tsunade-sama, who is very outstanding in medical ninjutsu, Sasuke is likely to be in the hospital bed. Spend the rest of your life. Lying in a hospital bed for the rest of your life is equivalent to having your entire life ruined. Speaking of this, Kakashi was very sad. Originally, Sasuke was the successor of Kakashi's valued mantle, but unexpectedly, this happened. Time is also fate. Seeing that Sasuke was not dead, the Sandame breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Kakashi, as Sasuke's teacher, you must do a good job in Sasuke's ideological work and never let him have the idea of committing suicide. As for asking Tsunade to come back, this was not part of the Sandame's plan. As long as Sasuke doesn't die, that's fine. It sounds cruel, but it is very realistic. It is impossible for the Sandame to spend a lot of time sending people all over the ninja world to find Tsunade just for Sasuke. Sasuke does not have such a big reputation. Unless Uchiha Itachi comes forward, this may be possible." What can Kakashi say? He also had no choice but to accept this reality. Neither the Sandame nor Kakashi expected that their decision today would benefit Nato in the end. As for what Yuya did, let's give it a try first. Forest of Death. The sun rises and the moon sets, day after day. 6 days later, the once lively forest returned to its former tranquility. The place where Yuya was, due to the fierce battle, was full of broken trees and scattered soil. Several corpses were lying in the wild, already rotting and emitting a musty smell. Logically speaking, the bloody smell of the corpses here has long attracted wild beasts in the forest. However, there was a big battle here before, which scared away the beasts with keen senses in the forest. Later, even if those carnivorous beasts came back, they could feel that something was wrong here, so no beasts came. However, the war has been going on for nearly a week, and after all, some beasts couldn't stand it anymore and came to explore. 3 leopards as big as yaks walked together, walking cautiously in the forest, sniffing from time to time. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The soil covered with thick leaves under their feet suddenly moved strangely. Before the 3 leopards could react, they suddenly stepped on the ground and a huge snake head as big as a truck suddenly appeared below them. 7 people hugged each other, and a white giant python with an upper body of more than 10 meters was exposed, suddenly sprang out from under the soil. The bones of the upper and lower jaws all spread out, and the mouth was opened wide. In an instant, 3 leopards were swallowed into the mouth. He is Yuya who uses earth escape to hide underground. Yuyi's jaw contracted a few times, and he forcefully swallowed the 3 leopards. He only heard the 3 leopards swallowing them into his stomach, letting out bursts of painful howls, and then they completely lost their breath. He couldn't help but feel creepy. Belch. Yuya burped slightly, narrowed his eyes slightly, and showed a contented expression. Looking closely, after 6 days of recuperation, the primary regeneration ability has been fully developed, and Yuya has returned to health. The palm-sized scales reflect a metallic color in the sunlight. After eating and drinking, it's time to do something. If Yuya remembered correctly, the official competition of the Chunin exam will be held tomorrow. At this moment, the system prompt sounded. Congratulations to the host for triggering the hidden task, my fate is in my own hands. Rare. Second stage task, be arrogant and wreak havoc. Task description, who stipulates that the snake of all worlds must follow the rules and be a down-to-earth good guy. On the day of the official competition of the Chunin exam, destroy as much as you can. The more important the original characters killed, the greater the degree of damage to Konoha village, the higher the score. Task reward, depends on the score when the task is completed. It's really a sleepy person who gets a pillow. Seeing this task, Yuyi's eyes flashed with a gleam of murderous intent. Yuyi has not forgotten that when he was summoned by Orochimaru, Orochimaru had a coveted ambition for his body. If it weren't for his concern for Sasuke's body, I'm afraid Yu Yi would have been possessed by Orochimaru long ago. This Chunin exam is also Yu Yi's best chance to kill Orochimaru. Moreover, now that Kabuto Yakushi is dead, Orochimaru has lost his right-hand man, and only his subordinates from the Sound Village are left by his side. If he misses this opportunity, it will be difficult to kill Orochimaru again. Chapter 33. Sharpening the knife does not delay the chopping of wood. Yu Yi had learned the lesson from the first time. This time, when completing the second round of tasks, he had to prepare well and improve the evaluation of completing the tasks, so that he could reap the greatest benefits. Yu Yi never forgot that in the Longdi cave, there was still the great enemy Wan Shi waiting for him. So he had to race against time, strive for maximum benefits, and become stronger in the shortest time, so that he could take revenge on Wan Shi, the bastard. And now, there is only 1 day left before the official competition of the Chunin exam. In such a tight time, how to improve combat power? After evolving this white python body to the complete form, Yu Yi has already approached the ceiling of the evolution of the summoning beast. Even though he had killed so many candidates before and upgraded to level 10, his body shape did not change much, but the fairy chakra in his body increased slightly. If you put your hope on evolving in a short period of time, it is very unreliable. Therefore, Yu Yi focused on the use of abilities. Intermediate Fire Affinity and Intermediate Earth Affinity, these two talents, fell into Yu Yi's sight. Time is tight, Yu Yi first chooses Intermediate Fire Affinity. After all, the Intermediate Fire Affinity is the talent that Yu Yi got the earliest and is the most proficient in. But here comes the problem. Now, Yu Yi does not have much chakra in his body, at most it is the amount of chakra of a special ninja. It is not so easy to create a powerful and low-consuming move. Throughout the thousands of years of the ninja world, there is only one ninjutsu that can meet the requirements of powerful and low-consuming, and that is Raise Nan. Although practicing Raise Nan is very cliché, 9 out of 10 fanfictions are written like this. But who said that in the entire Naruto, the most detailed and cost-effective ninjutsu is Raise Nan? Of course, Yu Yi is also Drunkard's intention. Yu Yi hopes that with the help of Raise Nan as a springboard, he can practice the powerful S-level ninjutsu such as Tailed Beast Ball in the future. As a Naruto fan in his previous life, Yu Yi clearly remembered that the practice of Raise Nan was divided into 4 stages. The first stage was to condense the chakra in the palm of the hand. The second stage was to further practice the first stage, releasing chakra steadily and continuously, such as placing a balloon filled with water in the palm of the hand, and then releasing chakra, so that the water inside the balloon moved irregularly until the balloon exploded. The third stage, also known as the ball practice, maintained the released chakra and materialized it until the ball could be broken. After practicing this stage, the Raise Nan can already cause some damage, but it can only cause relatively minor damage, and even trees cannot be penetrated. The fourth stage is to condense and release chakra. Combining all the previous steps, condense the chakra in the palm, release it continuously, and maintain it, and finally solidify it at one point to become a small typhoon. The completed Raise Nan is powerful enough to easily penetrate trees and break rocks. Due to the poor conditions, Yu Yi couldn't get balloons and balls, so he had to bite the bullet and skip the first 3 stages and go directly to the 4th stage. Yu Yi opened his mouth, and the senjutsu chakra in his mouth began to condense. What made Yu Yi feel at ease was that the senjutsu chakra condensed very smoothly, just like a tamed beast, and there were no accidents when Naruto practiced. Yu Yi's eyes showed a thoughtful look. As we all know, ordinary chakra is obtained by the complete fusion of one's own physical energy and spiritual energy, while senjutsu chakra is formed by absorbing natural energy on this basis. Compared with humans who need to risk their lives to cultivate senjutsu chakra, Yu Yi, as a snake summoning beast of the Ryokai cave, naturally has an absolute advantage. Of course, there are gains and losses, and it is precisely because of this that most snake summoning beasts do not know ninjutsu. In Yu Yi's mouth, the senjutsu chakra rotated continuously in the counterclockwise direction, and soon formed a rotating tiny vortex. Seeing this, Yu Yi's eyes flashed with joy, knowing that there was hope. Yu Yi continued to increase the release of the fairy chakra, increasing the speed and frequency of the movement. Buzz! 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 After a while, the fairy chakra rotated at high speed, vibrating with the air, and emitted a series of low humming sounds. The lines drawn by the fairy chakra began to further materialize in the rapid rotation, like a woven ball of wool. Yu Yi practiced the Raise Nan in his first experiment. Yu Yi opened his mouth and spit out a football-sized Raise Nan, which shot out and landed on the ground not far away. Boom! The raised nan rotated rapidly, and the ground cracked in all directions with cracks as thick as chopsticks. Soon, a 1-foot deep pit was chiseled out, and green smoke was still coming out of the edge. The raised nan after adding the fairy chakra is much stronger than the raised nan with ordinary chakra. Seeing this, Yu Yi nodded with satisfaction. Then, the next highlight is coming. Yu Yi uses his intermediate fire affinity talent to integrate the flame into the raised nan. This causes the difficulty to increase exponentially. The flame is injected into the fairy chakra, just like a wave of ink poured into a clear pool, and the raised nan is dyed into a fiery red at an extremely fast speed. However, this is like pouring hot oil into cold water, which immediately caused a violent rebound. But the originally spherical raised nan had undergone a drastic change in just a moment, like a hedgehog, with spikes growing on the surface, and then it exploded in front of Yu Yi's dumb expression. Bang! Yu Yi only felt a pain in his mouth, shivered, and a puff of smoke came out of his mouth. This. Combining the intermediate fire affinity talent with the raised nan is more difficult than Yu Yi imagined. However, this did not discourage Yu Yi's enthusiasm, but instead made him devote himself to the research and development of new moves with even greater passion. If it doesn't work once, then twice. If it doesn't work twice, then 3 times. Yu Yi has a fierceness in his heart, a wildness that will not give up until the goal is achieved. Since his rebirth and crossing, Yu Yi has faced the threat of Orochimaru and Kabuto Yakushi, and then the sneak attack of Wan Shi, and recently Might Guy almost took his life. All of this forced Yu Yi to have a strong sense of crisis, forcing him to keep moving forward and keep getting stronger. It doesn't matter if there are difficulties. The most feared thing in this world is people with a heart. If there are conditions, go ahead. If there are no conditions, create conditions to go ahead. Fate allowed Yu Yi to get the devouring evolution system by chance, but what lay before Yu Yi was one strong man after another. Yu Yi couldn't choose to retreat because of a little difficulty. Chapter 34. The next day. Today is the official day of the Chuunin examination. In terms of scale, Konoha village is a relatively large town. It is located in the hinterland of the Land of Fire, surrounded by forests, mountains, and rivers, and has beautiful scenery. Looking towards Konoha village from a high place, the houses are connected with tiles and dotted with trees, and the scenery is eye-catching. There are many wooden buildings in the village. Many of the building walls are covered with vines, and the wooden balcony windows are filled with blooming flowers for those who can afford it. Here, the beauty of combining humanity and nature is reflected everywhere. There is a simple wooden fence on the outside, built along the leaf village. It looks like there are flaws everywhere, but in fact it is not. In the sky above Konoha village, there is a barrier once set up by the Uzumaki clan. It is invisible and incorporeal, and foreign ninjas can be easily identified. Coupled with the many ninjas within, it can be said to be impregnable. The streets are bustling with people and traffic. But today is destined to be the tragedy of Konoha. Whoosh! A cloud-piercing arrow flew high into the sky, and then exploded like fireworks in full bloom. This is the signal for the attack of Oto Ninja Village and Tsunagakure Village. After a while, a 3-headed grey-brown giant python suddenly appeared at the east gate of Konoha village. Hundreds of murderous ninjas followed closely, and soon they invaded Konoha village with overwhelming force. The shrill siren immediately resounded through the sky above Konoha village. Konoha village has been at peace for a long time, and they are the only ones who bully others. Who would have thought that when they hunt geese all day long, they would actually let the geese peck their eyes? All of a sudden, the entire Konoha village was boiling. As one of the older generation Inorikacho trio, Akimichi Tingzeo wore red armor and walked majestically onto the street. As an elite jounin, he directly took over the command of dozens of ninjas around him and said, "The enemy is coming, get ready to fight." Yes. Most of the ninjas around them were Chuunin and Genin. They had grown up listening to the legend of Inoshiga Butterfly. Naturally, they did not dare to obey Akimichi Tingze's orders and immediately entered the combat stage nervously. Konoha village is worthy of being the first of the 5 great ninja villages. Without Akimichi Tingze's personal instructions, the surrounding ninjas each found suitable defensive positions, each with their own characteristics on the eaves, tree crowns, and behind walls. This is just a microcosm of the entire battlefield. Marino Ibiki, Dozuki Yujeo, Sarutobi Asuma, Hinata. One by one, the most famous ninjas in Konoha village rushed towards the east gate of Konoha village, which was the focus of the attack of Oto Ninja village and Sand Hidden village, and had been completely captured. When most of the forces in Konoha village rushed to the east gate, not many people noticed anything strange about the west gate. The sun was blazing in the sky, and the weeds on both sides of the road were bent under the heat, with their heads lowered. There were as many grasshoppers as weeds. Normally at this time, they would have made a weak and noisy chirp, but today they were surprisingly quiet. It's so quiet that it makes your heart palpitate. This made Gang Zisha, who was guarding Ximen today, a little uneasy. There was a bandage wrapped around Gang Zisha's face. He and Shinayu Izumo were the watchdogs of Konoha village for 10,000 years. The uneasiness on his face was naturally seen by Shinayu Izumo. Kamizuki Izumo took out a cigarette, handed it over, and said with a smile. The enemy attacks from the east gate, what are you worried about? Gang Zisha took the cigarette and lit it, took a deep puff and said. I don't know why, but my left eyelid keeps twitching, which is not a good sign. Hearing what he said, the originally heartless Shinayu Izumo suddenly became nervous. He looked around suspiciously, but didn't see even a ghost. He immediately patted his chest, breathed a sigh of relief, and said. I was almost scared to death by you. Gang Zitai forced a smile and said. Maybe I'm too sensitive. The two of them talked to each other, but neither of them noticed that not far from them, the soil on the ground began to loosen. With his intermediate earth affinity, Yuya has been lurking here after completing his training, quietly waiting for the Sound Ninja Village and Sand Hidden Village to take action. Yuya didn't dare to go to the East Gate to join in the fun. Not to mention the large number of Jonin there, even Jiraiya, a shadow-level powerhouse, was about to appear there. Only if Yuya had eaten the bile of a leopard would he dare to stroke the tiger's beard. Seeing that the time was almost up, Yuya was like a poisonous snake hiding in the dark grass, suddenly sprang out from under the soil, and dealt a fatal blow to Gang Zisha and Shinayu Izumo. As the outstanding Chunin of Konoha village, Gang Zisha and Kamizuki Izumo never thought that there were enemies lurking right under their noses. By the time they react, it's already too late. A bloody mouth was reflected in the eyes of the two of them, and a stench of fishy wind hit their faces, making the two of them nauseous. They had just pulled out the kunao, and before they could do anything, they fell into darkness. Middle. Crack. 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 Accompanied by a creepy sound, Yuya opened his mouth and vomited, and Gang Zisha and Shinayu Izumo, who had long ceased to be human, fell to the ground, already lifeless. Bite. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a Chunin and gaining 5,000 points of swallowing evolutionary genes. Congratulations to the host for successfully swallowing the chakra of a Chunin and gaining 5,100 points of swallowing evolutionary genes. The sound of the system prompt made Yuya feel happy. He has evolved to the complete form now. If he wants to go further and reach the ultimate form, the swallowing evolution genes required are huge. If he only relies on swallowing animals, Yuyi will never be able to evolve to the ultimate form in his lifetime. Seeing that he had a good harvest, Yuyi's heart was immediately eager to move. In Konoha village, there are a large number of ninjas, which means a large number of swallowing evolution genes. Of course, there are ways and methods to do things. It is obviously not Yuyi's style to charge into the battle line like a fool. Yuyi took a deep breath, and a large amount of fairy chakra condensed in his mouth, then raised his head and opened his mouth to spray. Like a machine gun, Yuyi quickly spit out fireballs from his mouth, the size of a fist, and shot out like a fairy scattering flowers, drawing dangerous and deadly arcs in the sky, and scattered on the houses near the west gate. Thanks to the structure of the houses in Konoha village and the prevailing southwest wind, this place is the outlet of the wind. The fire took advantage of the wind and the wind helped the fire. The original spark suddenly became a prairie fire. Fire. Big fire. The houses near the west gate were on fire one after another, and the thick smoke was rushing to other places along the wind. The burning flames were more than 2 meters high, which was very terrifying. Screams and cries came from the surrounding houses. Many villagers ran to the street to avoid being burned to death in the house. But what made them even more desperate was still behind. A huge white python as big as a hill fell into the eyes of everyone. Yuyi's mouth curled slightly and said in human language. Hello. Chapter 35. Konoha Village, West Gate. Rows of wooden houses were burning in the fire. The flames rose up to 2 meters high. The thrown sparks danced wildly on the orange flames. The flying wood chips fell down. The smoke was so thick that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Against the backdrop of the firelight, Yuyi's snake head, which was as big as a truck head, looked extremely eerie. The little people who were stared at by Yu Yi's snake eyes held their breaths one by one, not daring to take a breath. Even if the smoke made the villagers shed tears, they did not dare to raise their hands to wipe them, for fear that they might accidentally offend the white python in front of them. Seeing the cautious appearance of these villagers, Yu Yi secretly laughed in his heart. Of course, Yu Yi had no intention of taking action against these innocent villagers. Even if he was reborn as a snake in this life, Yu Yi had killed many people, but if he aimed his butcher knife at ordinary people, he still couldn't do it. This is also the bottom line of Yu Yi's life. The corner of Yu Yi's mouth curled up slightly, showing what he thought was a friendly smile, and said, "Why are you still hanging around here? Why don't you leave quickly?" Little did he know that under the flickering firelight, his smile looked so ferocious that a chill surged from the bottom of one's heart to the top of his head, and his head went blank for an instant. "Run!" Among the crowd, an unknown woman let out a high decibel scream, which immediately caused a domino effect among the villagers. The villagers looked horrified, immediately raised their feet and fled away, scattering like birds and beasts. After a while, Yu Yi's eyes suddenly became empty, and there was no one left. The smile on Yu Yi's face gradually solidified. Shaking his head and throwing away some unrealistic thoughts in his mind, Nato looked to the east. There, several figures were approaching quickly. As one of the proctors for the first round of the Chiyunin exam, Saint Simon originally had nothing to do today, so he was drinking and chatting with a few friends in a nearby tavern. Saint Simon never expected that Konoha village, which had been at peace for a long time, would be invaded by foreign enemies today. Moreover, there were enemies breaking in through the west gate, so close to where they were drinking. The Saint Simon men were agile and jumped back and forth on the eaves. When they noticed that Yu Yi was setting fires everywhere, Saint Simon and others were suddenly shocked. Several of them were experienced ninjas with sharp minds, and they quickly imagined the consequences of the fire spreading. Saint Simon's pupils narrowed slightly and he said in surprise, "No, we must not let the fire continue to spread." The friend beside him nodded, also understanding that the situation was critical. There are several ways to put out a fire. One is to eliminate the source of the fire, the other is to create an isolation zone, and the third is to put out the fire. Eliminating the source of the fire meant facing the mountain like white giant python. Saint Simon and the others were just ordinary chunin. After comparing their small arms and thin legs, they immediately gave up this plan. Water escape. Water spout technique. Earth escape. Mud and sand technique. Saint Simon and several people used various methods to extinguish the fire with water, and created a firewall with sand to isolate the burning house from the outside world. For experienced Chiyunin like them, these are things that are easy to do, and they are naturally extremely skilled and efficient in doing them. However, because of this, several of them fell into Yu Yi's sight. "You are seeking death." After saying these words, Yu Yi took a puff, as if jumping into a river, and his huge body merged into the soil beneath him. Saint Simon had been paying attention to the white giant python in the distance. When he saw Yu Yi disappearing, as a well-tested ninja, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Saint Simon didn't even think about it, he turned around and retreated. Seeing this, his friends beside him, although they didn't understand what happened, also reacted. Unfortunately, it's too late. Silently, there was a bump in the soil underfoot, and then the ground suddenly protruded. A huge snake head emerged from the ground, opened its bloody mouth, and bit directly towards the waist of the nearest ninja. It's too late to say it, but it's soon. Everything happened in a flash of lightning. When Saint Simon came to his senses, only the screams and cries of pain from his friends could be heard behind him. Accompanied by bursts of biting sounds that made one's hair stand on end, Saint Simon suddenly felt a chill on his back, knowing that his friends were probably in danger. Whoosh! Just as Siemens was running away, he felt a sound of breaking wind coming from behind his head. He lowered his head and saw an obscure corpse flying over his head, sprinkling blood on his face. Oh no! Saint Simon's pupils contracted, and he immediately recognized this as his friend. But before he could do anything, Yu Yi immediately bared his fangs and spit out a long scarlet tongue. It was like throwing a spear. It was fast and sharp. It suddenly penetrated through the back of Saint Simon and directly stabbed the heart. Saint Simon felt the heat in his body drain away, his hands and feet gradually became cold, his vision gradually became blurred, and he fell limply to the ground. Without the fire-fighting efforts of Saint Simon, the place was soon covered in fire again. The fire burning here at the west gate of Konoha village can be discovered by anyone who cares. What's more, Yu Yi's body is huge, and his upper body stands upright like a tall building. It is difficult to not attract attention. Although most of the forces in Konoha village immediately rushed to the east gate, which was the first to fall, under the coordination of some elite jounin, a team of nearly 100 people from the front line rushed to the west gate for rescue. Among them, the older generation of the pig, deer, and butterfly trio was among them. Looking at the blazing fire to the west of Konoha village, Narashikaku had a headache, rubbed his forehead, and said, "It's really troublesome. I didn't expect that this time, the sand village was so well prepared. It really caught us off guard." Yamanaka Inoichi looked bad, with several cuts on his body, which were obviously left in the previous battle with the enemy. Yamanaka Inoichi nodded and said, "Yes, according to the intelligence of my men, this time the sand village actually arranged the one-tailed Shikaku's human pillar among the candidates, and now it is wreaking havoc in the examination room, causing us to be seriously short of manpower." Yu Yi's rebirth finally caused the butterfly effect. Originally in the original work, Gaara was taken away in the examination room. Unexpectedly, with Yu Yi's intervention, Gaara was directly transformed into a tailed beast in the examination room, causing immeasurable damage. Listening to the complaints of his two old friends, Akimichi Choza rolled his eyes and said, "You two should stop talking. Our most urgent task now is to kill the giant white python that invaded the west gate. Otherwise, our Konoha village will be attacked from both the east and the west. It will be a disaster then." Narashikaku and Yamanaka Inoichi immediately shut up and quickened their pace. Chapter 36. The older generation of the pig, deer, and Joe trio led nearly 100 ninjas to a place 1,000 meters away from Yu Yi. As excellent commanders and staff officers, Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku had cooperated countless times, and they began to assign their positions without saying much. This was a siege against Yu Yi. Fighting is not a swarm of bees, those are just scattered soldiers. As the leader of the 5 major ninja villages, Konoha village has survived several ninja world wars and naturally has a set of effective combat guidelines. Under the arrangement of Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku, nearly 100 ninjas have clear division of labor. Ninjas who are good at ninjutsu are grouped into a large team, with 3 people in a small team, scattered and occupying commanding heights everywhere. Those who are good at physical combat shuttle through the streets and alleys, act covertly, and approach Yu Yi secretly. The medical ninjas and sensory ninjas who were not good at fighting were not idle either. They cleaned up the surroundings, built a temporary command center, and set up many checkpoints on the road to prevent Yu Yi from going straight to Huanglong. Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku stood on the high platform of the command center, surrounded by circles of barriers formed by earth escape. Nearly 100 people circled the circular defense circle to form an offensive and defensive stronghold. Their actions here naturally could not be hidden from Yu Yi's eyes. Interesting. Yu Yi used the same trick again, and the snake body like a hill merged into the soil and disappeared from everyone's sight in an instant. As a sensory ninja, Yamanaka Inoichi immediately closed his eyes, and the surrounding geographical conditions formed a simple 3-dimensional figure in his mind. And in this 3D map, a huge figure appeared, approaching the temporary command center at a very fast speed. Yamanaka Inoichi suddenly opened his eyes, pointed his finger at a civilian house 300 meters to the right, and gave an order to the ninja who was good at ninjutsu, saying, "Attack there immediately." The ninjas led by Inoshikacha naturally did not dare to disobey Yamanaka Inoichi's order. Fire escape. Great fireball technique. Wind escape. Big breakthrough. Lightning escape. Thunder. For a moment, all kinds of gorgeous ninjutsu were immediately released from the hands of the ninjas occupying the commanding heights. Boom. 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 Various C-level and B-level ninjutsu bombarded in turn, forming a saturation attack, instantly raising the designated civilian house to the ground, and even the ground was overturned several layers. If it was a ninjutsu of wind escape and fire escape, it would be fine, but lightning escape has always restrained earth escape, and it has strong penetrating power. Even if Yu Yi hid deep underground, he was still hit by the penetrating lightning escape. Ah! Yu Yi let out a deafening cry of pain, the soil on the ground rolled, and a huge figure flew out from under the soil. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, 80 meters, the slender snake body was completely exposed to everyone's sight. The waist was as thick as 7 people hugging, the snake head was as big as a truck, and the scales as big as a palm were shining in the sun. Yamanaka Inoichi looked solemn. He didn't expect that after the carpet attack, the white giant python in front of him didn't suffer much damage. Before he continued to give orders, the ninjas who were good at close combat couldn't hold back first, wanting to win the first merit, and they all displayed their sharp body movements and quickly approached Yu Yi. Konoha village is very harsh for the promotion of ninjas. If a chunin wants to be promoted to a special jonin and jonin, he not only needs to be strong, but also needs to spend time to complete a large number of tasks. And now, as long as Yu Yi is killed, he can get amazing military exploits. How can it not be eye-catching? A one-eyed ninja wearing a Konoha forward protector, holding a short knife in his right hand, jumped up from the eaves nimbly, like a big bird falling from the sky. He suddenly burst out with strength, and the short knife in his hand stabbed Yu Yi's forehead quickly and fiercely. The one-eyed ninja's mouth curled up a grim smile, and he was already imagining the scene in his heart that when the white giant python in front of him was stabbed in the head by him, the brain inside would splatter like tofu. Die, monster! Ding! To his surprise, when the tip of the short knife pierced into Yu Yi's forehead, it seemed to hit a rock. Not to mention piercing in, it couldn't even break through the thick stratum corneum outside the scales. Instead, a force came, which paralyzed the one-eyed ninja's right hand and cracked the tiger's mouth. Yu Yi and the one-eyed ninja looked at each other, blinked, and said in human language, "Are you tickling me?" The one-eyed ninja's face suddenly changed, perhaps because the white giant python in front of him spoke human language, or perhaps because he was surprised by Yu Yi's amazing defense. Before he could make any response, he heard a sharp sound of breaking wind. Swoosh! Yu Yi opened his mouth and spit out, and the scarlet long tongue shot out like a bullet, piercing the one-eyed ninja's heart like a spear. Yu Yi flicked his tongue, and the lifeless body was immediately thrown to another ninja who was approaching, knocking him down. Then, Yu Yi pulled out his snake tail, carrying a whistling wind, and fell like a thunderbolt from a towering tree. Bang! The unlucky ninja didn't know what happened, and was smashed into a meat pie in a daze. Seeing Yu Yi being so ferocious, the surrounding ninjas who were originally eager to gain military merit stopped in their tracks, their eyes filled with horror. Yu Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he would not let go of these movement points in front of him. His thick snake tail suddenly twitched on the ground, and his huge body suddenly rose up, carrying an overwhelming stench and fishy wind, and ferociously pounced on the surrounding ninjas. Bang! 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 Yu Yi was like a man in an empty space, and wherever he passed, there was a bloody storm, and there was no one who could stop him. All the ninjas who stood in front of him were either crushed into slag or their heads and bodies were separated, and there was no intact place. Seeing Yu Yi with a small victory, he rushed straight to the temporary command center like a tank running rampant, and a seemingly small figure stood in the way that Yu Yi had to pass. Akimichi Kozuo, wearing a red vest, moved his wrists, making a series of crackling sounds, like frying beans. He looked at Yu Yi fearlessly and said, "You are very good, let me meet you." Akimichi Kozuo clenched his fists and shouted, "Super multiplication technique! Big, big, big!" Akimichi Kozuo's figure, like a bloated balloon, expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, a giant with a height of about 30 meters, like a giant holding up the sky, stretched across the earth like a small mountain, pointing directly at Yu Yi. Akimichi Kozuo raised a middle finger to Yu Yi provocatively, expressionless, and said, "Sorry, this road is blocked." Chapter 37. Akimichi Tingzuo's body began to grow like a balloon. In a few breaths, he turned into a 30-meter tall giant. The ground could not bear the gravity and sank down slowly. Even the red armor he was wearing grew larger, shining with red light. He looked extraordinary and heroic, like a god of war from heaven. Akimichi Tingzuo's muscles were knotted and his aura was powerful. He stomped his feet slightly and a house next to him cracked and shattered. Akimichi Tingzuo silently clenched his fist, feeling the terrifying power surging in his body. He felt that he could break the sky with one punch. Of course, he also knew that this was an illusion caused by the expansion of power. Chudeo Dingzhou looked at the equally huge Yu Yi opposite him, and his passionate fighting spirit shot out from his eyes like a sharp sword, and his voice was like a bell from the 9 heavens, saying, "Little guy, let my fist teach you to be a snake again." The light flashed in his eyes as big as copper bells, and his eyes fell on Yu Yi. He jumped up and punched the air. His fist as big as an elephant fell straight down on his head. Yu Yi's face turned black, with frost on his face, and he jumped up. His huge snake body brought up gusts of wind whistling, and the snake hissed to the sky. If you have the ability, do it for me. Yu Ye laughed wildly, with anger, like a steel warship rushing straight at him, plowing a deep mark on the ground. Yu Ye's snake tail twitched on the ground, like a big knife, drawing a fierce arc, and twitching towards Chu Dao Dingzhou's fist. Even the air made a burst of explosion. Dong! The giant fist and the giant tail collided with a bang, and it was like beating the heavenly drum. The power of the man and the snake was completely different. If you want to make an analogy, Akimichi Choza was as heavy as a mountain, while Yu Yi was as sharp as a sword. Judging from the momentum alone, there was no difference between the two sides. Akimichi Choza was indeed an elite jonin, and the attack was from above, taking advantage of the terrain. After the collision, Akimichi Choza retreated 1 meter, while Yu Yi retreated 3 meters. It can be seen that after using the super multiplication technique, Akimichi Choza's power was extraordinary. Seeing this, Narashikaku nodded with satisfaction and ordered the nearby ninjas not to take action first to avoid affecting Akimichi Choza. Yamanaka Hiaichi was delighted and said, "It seems that Dingzhou is still in good shape. With him, we can be much more relaxed." Although Narashikaku was also happy for his friend, he was cautious by nature and did not show any emotion on his face. He reminded, "It's not the time to be happy yet." The others were pleased to see it, but the person involved did not show any joy at all, but his face became solemn. Akimichi Dingzhou moved his right fist. It seemed that he had the upper hand just now, but only he knew that he did not cause much injury to the opponent. On the contrary, his right fist was still numb, and 60% of his strength was lost, so it would not be useful in the short term. Although he actually suffered a loss, he could not fall behind in his appearance. "The little guy on the opposite side, it seems that you are not that good." Akimichi Dingzhou used words to attack Yu Yi, but secretly delayed time to restore the perception of his right fist. How could his little action be hidden from Yu Yi's sharp eyes? Yu Yi's snake whistled, and he laughed, saying, "I really admire your courage. You dare to compete with me in strength. Now, your fist hurts, right?" Yu Yi's words directly hit the pain point of Chu Daochu, causing his face to change slightly. It is true that Chu Daochu is an elite jonin, but with his strength, how can he be compared with Yu Yi? As the saying goes, take advantage of your weakness to kill you. Yu Yi's thick snake tail suddenly twitched on the ground, and its huge snake body blasted out like a cannonball. A burst of air explosion sounded out of thin air, carrying the fishy wind all over the sky, and ferociously pounced on Chu Daochu. Akimichi Kozuo's pupil shrank, and his body retreated repeatedly. However, Yu Yi's speed was faster, and the thick and long snake tail was spinning like a shadow in the air, setting off layers of sonic booms, and the sound of surging waves was extremely powerful. The giant tail passed across the sky, and the terrifying air wave it set off actually plowed a deep ditch on the ground. Akimichi Choza's face changed greatly. The layers of power made him feel as if he was facing a majestic sea wave, vast and boundless. But as an elite jonin, and a member of the Akimichi family with profound family knowledge, Akimichi Choza did not have no solution to this situation. Super Meat Bomb Tank. Accompanied by a loud shout like a bell, Akimichi Choza's limbs contracted, his body huddled together, and his fat turned into a solid armor, resisting Yu Yi's attack. Bang! As if swinging a bat to hit a home run, Akimichi Choza's huge round body flew out. The surrounding streets and houses were torn apart like rags. Wherever he passed, the sand and gravel on the ground were lifted up, like the wind and clouds. The ninjas near Akimichi Choza were so scared that their faces changed greatly. They didn't want to be affected, so they quickly dodged. Seeing this, Yamanaka Hai showed a look of shock and asked in surprise, "Is Dingzhou okay?" Narashikaku was still the same, as if nothing could disturb him. His face was calm and he said, "The three of us have fought side by side for so many years, don't you know him? This is just a warm-up match." Sure enough. Just as Narashikaku finished speaking, a burly figure in a red vest crawled out from the mess of rubble. However, Akimichi Choza was not hurt at all, and a pure sense of power emanated from his mountain-like body. His long red hair was casually draped over his shoulders, and the fighting spirit in his eyes burned like a flame. This scene immediately shocked the nearby ninjas. As expected of the famous Inoshikajo, he is not hurt at all. I was really scared just now, I thought he was dead. As the saying goes, a person's name is like a tree's shadow. The Inoshikajo trio has been passed down for many years, and has experienced countless wars. They are still strong until now, and naturally there is a reason for their existence. Pretentious. Yu Yi curled his lips in disdain, and stood up with his upper body. He looked at Chu Dao Dingzhou at eye level, confronted each other, and sneered. Why, aren't you going to teach me how to be a snake again? Yu Yi brought up the old things again, just like a slap on Chu Dao Dingzhou's face, which made him feel hot. However, who can blame the Chu Dao family for their skills, all in the super multiplication technique, and other means are mediocre. If they compete with their physical bodies, I am afraid that even Chu Dao Dingzhou will not be able to hold on for long. Yu Yi's sneer became more intense, and he continued to attack. In that case, I will have to teach you to be a human again. Chapter 38. Akimichi Choza gritted his teeth, took out a handful of secret medicines from his pocket and swallowed them. These are secret medicines that the Akimichi family has developed and improved after decades of research and development, and can assist in combat. In an instant, Akimichi Dingzhou suddenly felt hot all over, blood boiled in his meridians, and majestic power gathered from his limbs and bones. With strong fighting spirit burning like a flame, Akimichi Dingzhou directly faced the equally huge white python. Drink! A palm print as huge as an inscription was blasted out fiercely, and even the air rippled violently amid the sound of explosions. Yu Yi's eyes narrowed, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He fought hard against Akimichi Dingzhou's palm, and the huge snake body came close to it. With lightning speed, it wrapped around Akimichi Dingzhou's body like the roots of an old tree. Yu Yi's snake body tied Akimichi Dingzhou's hands and feet tightly like a five-flower bundle. However, Yu Yi also felt uncomfortable, and Akimichi Dingzhou suddenly landed with a palm. Bang! Click! Yu Yi only felt a pain in his side. Akimichi Dingzhou's huge palm print was taken, and a dark hand print was imprinted on the pleated and glowing white scales. The area that was hit was shaking like an epileptic, and the scales on it were broken inch by inch. The energy of beating an ox across a mountain was so strong that it even penetrated and shattered the muscles inside. Hiss! Yu Yi took a breath of cold air. But the pain stimulated Yu Yi's ferocity, and a vicious light burst out from his eyes. The slender snake body tightly wrapped around Akimichi Dingzhou's body, like a circle of iron hoops locking him. After a while, one person and one snake couldn't tell each other apart. Akimichi Dingzhou's whole body was entangled by the snake's body, with only one head exposed. However, because Nato began to withdraw his strength, he suddenly felt depressed, his lungs were unable to breathe, and his big face turned red from holding back. Nato's huge snake head was stuck next to Akimichi Dingzhou, and the angle of his open mouth was close to 180 degrees. The fishy bloody mouth even allowed Akimichi Dingzhou to see the dark and damp throat. Seeing their good brothers suffer, how could Yamanaka Hiki and Narashikaku sit idly by? Even in such a critical situation, Narashikaku's expression remained calm, as if nothing could move him. Narashikaku took his time, formed seals with his hands, and said calmly. Ninja technique. Shadow binding technique. From Narashikaku's feet, the humanoid shadow stretched and thickened like rubber, and in a very short period of time, it settled into the huge shadow under Nato. Just as Yu Yi was about to bite off Akimichi Dingzhou's neck, his expression suddenly changed. At this moment, Yu Yi felt that he couldn't help himself. In addition to being able to activate his mind, he actually lost control of his body. Yu Yi's eyes flickered, and he clearly understood that he had been tricked. Don't try to control me. Nato's eyes were fierce, his snake body trembled faintly, and he began to fight with Narashikaku for control of his body. Narashikaku's face turned pale, and his hands were shaking, obviously he was under a lot of pressure. However, Narashikaku did not show any weakness. Instead, he said to Yamanaka Kiki beside him. I caught him. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As the temporary commander, Yamanaka Kiki also knew that the opportunity could not be missed and the time would never come again. He immediately gave the command to the large group of ninjas who were good at ninjutsu and said. All teammates obey the order. Shoot. There were a large number of Chunin and Genin around. Although they were afraid of Nato, they had no objection at all. Everyone was like a screw, firmly and persistently carrying out Yamanaka Hiki's orders to the end. Fire escape. The powerful fireball technique. Wind escape. Big breakthrough. Most of these ninjas are from civilian backgrounds, and naturally they release the cheapest and most cost-effective combined ninjutsu. Fire takes advantage of the wind, and the wind helps the fire. Fireballs shot out like thousands of arrows. In an instant, smoke and flames rose into the sky, and the flames raged, making half of the sky burn red. It was so powerful that it was comparable to the power of A-level ninjutsu. Even if there is a hill in front of you, it will probably be burned to the ground in an instant. The three older generations, Zhu Lu Dai, have fought side by side countless times in the past decades. It is not that they have never encountered opponents like you yet, but every time, the enemy died out of hatred. Just when Yamanaka Hai was looking forward to it, waiting for Yu Ye to be burned by fire and burnt to ashes like his past enemies, he suddenly discovered that Yu Yi's huge snake head evoked a playful smile. Is he laughing? What is going on? The next moment, the answer is revealed. Like the stars falling from the 9 heavens, the fireballs strengthened by the wind, with the sound of howling wind, ignited the air along the way, like comets dragging long tails, suddenly smashing into the coils. On the body of Yu Yi snake. Boom! The surging heat contained in each big fireball suddenly bloomed, and the red flames rose up, purer and more intense than the brilliance of the sun. A rolling heat wave hit his face, and a huge breath of flames spurted out. Even though the temporary command center where Yamanaka Hiki was located was far away from the flames, it felt like he was in an oven where gold was melted and iron was smelted. The hair on his body was burned by the high temperature and curled up instantly. It is conceivable that the white giant python in the center of the flames must be extremely dead. As for the safety of his friend Akimichi Choza, Yamanaka Kiki is not too worried. Not to mention that Nato is blocking the outside and has suffered most of the damage. Akimichi Choza's thick fat body alone has extremely high defense. Most of them were seriously injured. However, in Yamanaka Hiki's induction, Yu Yi's life form aura was still strong, like the bright moon in the sky. It was difficult not to notice. On the contrary, it was his friend Akimichi Dingza whose chakra aura suddenly disappeared. How is this possible? Shan Zhonghai glared with an expression of disbelief. As there was a wave of flames ahead that obscured his view, Narashikaku still didn't understand what had happened, which shocked his friend so much that he couldn't help but blurt out. Hai Yi, what happened? Dingzo. Shan Zhonghai's voice was hoarse and he choked with sobs. He's dead. Even though Narashikaku had been calm and composed from the beginning of the battle to the present, when he suddenly heard the bad news, he lost his composure. His face showed surprise as never before, and he said in shock. This is impossible. At this moment, there was an uproar from the surrounding ninjas. From the sea of fire, a cold and deep voice came out. Nothing is impossible. Yamanaka Hiki and Narashikaku were shocked, and they all looked for help. Chapter 39. Stupid human. Just as everyone was in doubt, the surging and hot sea of fire was cut open as if by a knife, and a huge figure crawled out from the sea of fire. The upper body alone was more than 10 meters high, and the white scales as big as a palm reflected the cold color under the firelight, bringing a chill. The white python, Yu Yi. As if walking leisurely in the back garden, Yu Yi slowly walked out of the sea of fire, and the raging flames scattered around his body, not even a corner of him could be touched. Seeing Yu Yi intact, Yamanaka Kiki and Narashikaku suddenly changed color. Both of them are experienced jonin who have been through many battles. What kind of tough opponents have they not seen, what kind of hard bones have they not touched? But under the overwhelming fireball attack, the white python can still talk and laugh in the sea of fire. Such a strong opponent is really the first time for the two of them. Sensing the horror in the depths of the two people's eyes, Yu Yi smiled slightly. As an enemy, Yu Yi naturally couldn't tell them that all this came from his innate intermediate fire affinity. Yu Yi's eyes were filled with murderous intent, his snake tongue spit out, and he licked his mouth lightly, revealing his sharp and thick fangs. Against the backdrop of the fire, he was like a devil walking out of the flames, with a kind of awe-inspiring momentum. Yu Yi seemed to be chanting, and his cold and deep voice sounded. Konoha will eventually usher in the end of the end, and the collapse is coming. You who stop me are just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. As the voice fell, Yu Yi's body was engulfed in flames, and the vast breath surged straight up to the sky. Even the sea of fire behind him suddenly surged violently, as if a minister was worshipping the king, and bowed slightly in the direction of Yu Yi. This scene is so shocking. Not to mention that the Chunin and Genin around them had never seen the world, even experienced jonin like Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku had never seen it. Some young genin who had just stepped into the ninja world were not strong enough in mind, and were shocked by Yu Yi's bluffing. There were even 1 or 2 young genin who turned pale, their legs softened, and fell to the ground with a plop. Fortunately, everyone's eyes were on Yu Yi, and they didn't notice those unlucky guys at all, otherwise they would have spent the rest of their lives in the ridicule of others. Narashikako was a shrewd man after all. He took a deep breath, hid the grief of his partner's death in his heart, and said to Yamanaka Inoichi who was standing beside him. Inoichi, I will do my best to restrain the movement of this white python. You command the surrounding ninjas to launch joint ninjutsu again. Remember, this time, don't use fire escape. I seriously doubt that this monster in front of you is not afraid of fire at all. As expected of the top think tank with the highest IQ in Konoha. Based on just a few clues, Narashikako discovered Yu Yi's problem. Yu Yi has been paying attention to the temporary command center where they are, especially Narashikaku. Yu Yi cares a lot about him. After all, he is known as a wise man with a demonic IQ. He dare not be careless. As soon as he heard Narashikaku's suggestion, Yu Yi knew that he was in trouble. Once it was changed to a joint ninjutsu of other attributes, one by one, ninjutsu comparable to A-level destructive power, cast on him without cost, Yu Yi would be finished even if he was lucky. It seems that I can't spare your life. With a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, Yu Yi rushed to the high platform of the temporary command center with the momentum of sweeping thousands of troops, bringing up a burst of dust. The sharp edge was revealed. Seeing this, Yamanaka Hai was shocked and ordered his ninjutsu brigade to start joint casting, while ordering the other two teams to try their best to stop Yu Yi. The ninjas who are good at close combat, either holding a short sword or a reverse grip of a kunao, performed ghostly body movements, trying to get close to Yu Yi's vital point and give him a fatal blow. Facing these fly-like ninjas, Yu Yi immediately fought back. Hey! Brilliant sparks burst out from Yu Yi's body, like fireworks blooming, beautiful but deadly threats. A ninja who was close to Yu Yi's snake body, before he could react, let out a painful wail, and the whole person was ignited by the sparks, turning into a human-shaped fire barrel, and fell off the snake body. Then, he was carelessly crushed by Yu Yi. Crack! Yu Yi's huge snake body passed by, leaving only a shallow pool of blood. Seeing this, the melee ninjas who approached were all shocked and quickly threw out the kunao, senbon, and fuma shuriken in their hands to deal with the task. The result is naturally imaginable. These weapons fell on Yu Yi, and they were useless except for making a jingling sound. In the temporary command center, the barrier class, which is good at barrier, has not been idle. From the beginning to now, they have been busy carving spells on the ground, forming invisible barrier walls, blocking Yu Yi in front of them. Narashikaku is very smart and considers defeat before victory. He has already estimated the possibility of Yu Yi rushing to the temporary command center. Now, Narashikaku's arrangement has finally played a huge role, avoiding the nightmare of the command center being destroyed. A mere barrier, don't think of stopping me. Yu Yi swung his tail horizontally, and the majestic force of 1,000 pounds of force burst out. The invisible barrier blocking the front was like a lonely boat in the raging waves, being blown and wrinkled, and then shattered like a glass window, with cracks spreading in all directions and cracks like spider webs. Crack! After several attempts, the barrier finally couldn't bear it and shattered. Puff! The faces of the several ninjas who maintained the barrier suddenly turned golden. They were strongly rebounded, and the chakra in their bodies was instantly disordered and violent. In severe cases, the meridians were even broken, and they vomited blood repeatedly, fainted and collapsed. But it must be said that the efforts of the barrier class were not in vain, and they delayed the ninjutsu class for a long enough time. In an instant, the sky suddenly dimmed, and the sky was covered by dark clouds, as if it was cotton wool soaked in ink, gloomy and dark, bringing endless pressure. Nearly 30 ninjas coordinated synchronously, forming seals in the same steps, and achieved linkage. They maintained the seal-forming posture with both hands and shouted at the same time. Thunder escape! Thunder! Then, a purple thunder several feet long fell from the sky. The purple thunder as thick as a bucket, like a purple comet from outside the domain, tore through the sky at this moment, like a finger of the god of death, covering the sky above Yu Yi's head. Chapter 40. Swish! The purple thunder as thick as a bucket passed by without any alarming loud noise. Wherever the thunder passed, it seemed that even the air along the way was dispersed at this moment. Anyone could clearly feel the terrible power contained in the purple thunder. This power seemed to be able to penetrate the mountains. As the person involved, Yu Yi was also immediately moved by the purple thunder, and his face gradually became solemn. This is the destructive power comparable to Super A-level ninjutsu. Yu Yi did not dare to delay at all and turned around to hide. But if he wanted to hide, he had to ask Narashikaku if he agreed. Narashikaku had completed the seal early in the morning, but he had not released the ninjutsu, just to wait for this moment. Ninjutsu. Shadow binding technique. A shadow stretched and thickened, connecting a man and a snake. Yu Yi's body, which was originally moving, suddenly stopped, as if he was stuck at this moment forever. Seeing Yu Yi's pair of snake eyes looking at him with murderous intent, Narashikaku laughed, laughing heartily, but his voice seemed to be soaked in the cold spirit of Xianbing, extremely cold, and said, "Go to hell and confess to Ding Zhou." Boom! The purple thunder penetrated the sky and the earth, and went straight to Yu Yi with an unstoppable momentum. The purple thunder rapidly enlarged in Yu Yi's snake eyes, and the desperate crisis was in front of him. How can I die here? All kinds of madness flashed in Yu Yi's snake eyes. Driven by the strong desire to survive, the snake body shook violently and broke free from Narashikaku's restraints. However, even if he wanted to dodge now, it was too late. Seeing that the purple thunder was about to fall on his head, the next moment, in the eyes of many astonished people, Yu Yi suddenly soared into the sky, raised his huge snake head, opened his bloody mouth, and swallowed the purple thunder in one gulp. Time seemed to be frozen at this moment. The giant python swallowed thunder. This scene will be permanently imprinted in everyone's mind. In an instant, the jumping thunder entered the abdomen, like a purple tsunami, sweeping over, and the brilliant and dazzling light came out from Yu Yi's teeth. Zzz. Zzz. Yu Yi's whole body seemed to be shaking like a sieve, from meridians to bones, from flesh and blood to scales, every foot and every inch of his body was shaking non-stop. A trace of electric arc penetrated the skin, like a purple elf dancing outside the body, directly electrifying the palm-sized scales into charred black. Boom! With a raging roar, Yu Yi's mountain-like snake body collapsed, and a large area of houses and roads were crushed into slag, smashing a large pit several feet deep on the ground. Seeing this scene, Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku both breathed a sigh of relief, and the ninjas present cheered for victory. Yamanaka Inoichi wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Although he was commanding easily just now, as a commander, he was under great pressure every moment. If he was not careful, he would lose everything. Yamanaka Inoichi exhaled, his face relaxed, and said, "This time, the spirit of Ding Zhou in heaven will also feel comforted." Narashikaku said nothing, but just looked up at the blue sky after the clouds dispersed, as if he could see the voice and appearance of Akimichi Ding Zhou. In their opinion, the white giant python in front of them had obviously been electrocuted to death. But what about the reality? The strong desire to survive made Yu Yi still hold his breath. Yu Yi dared to participate in the collapse of Konoha, so he naturally had his trump card. That is, the innate primary regeneration. Primary regeneration can consume a lot of physical strength, or devour a large number of creatures to recover from one's own injuries. Before going to Konoha village, Yu Yi swallowed a large number of beasts in the death forest into his stomach as a precautionary measure, and now is the time to use it. Gurgle. Gurgle. The abdomen spasmed, and the large number of beasts stored in the stomach were completely dissolved by the stomach acid, and quickly turned into streams of energy, nourishing the damaged meridians in the body and repairing damaged muscles. Even the thunder swallowed into the stomach could not escape the fate of being digested. At this time, if Yamanaka Hai maintained his perception in the 3D pattern in his mind, he would suddenly find that Yu Yi's life breath, which was weak like a candle that was about to go out, suddenly became vigorous in a short time, like a burning pillar of fire. All the ninjas present relaxed their vigilance and gathered again in the temporary command center. Medical ninjas gave emergency treatment to the injured, ninjas who knew each other gathered together to chat, and some ninjas checked the packages around their waists, preparing to rush to the east gate, which was in a stalemate. It was a happy scene. Suddenly, the ground roared, a layer of yellow light kept rolling, and hideous ground spikes, like mushrooms after rain, broke out of the ground frantically, instantly covering hundreds of meters around, and completely covering the entire temporary command center. Convex. 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 The ninjas who were originally talking and laughing, before they could react, only felt the ground under their feet shaking, and were pierced through the body by the sharp ground spikes on the spot, blood gushing out like a fountain, spraying on the ground, a piece of bright red. Dozens of ninjas died on the spot. The scene was like hell, extremely tragic. Yamanaka Inoichi and Narashikaku were indeed veteran jonin. As soon as they realized something was wrong, they moved as light as a swallow and used their exquisite body movements to narrowly avoid the deadly ground spikes. The two looked solemn and had no idea what was going on. As a perceptual ninja, Yamanaka Inu instinctively began to sense the surroundings. Then, Yamanaka Inu seemed to have seen something incredible, and his face suddenly changed. How could this happen? If it were possible, he really wanted to yell, "This is unscientific." Unfortunately, Yanaka Inu only had time to shout out one sentence, which became his last words. However, a white giant python emerged from the ground like a fish, and bit Yamanaka Inu's waist with a bloody mouth. Crack! In an instant, blood was floating and people were falling. Narashikaku's pupils shrank into pinholes, and the picture froze in his eyes. His friend's blood gushed out, and the upper half of his body fell rapidly. "It's your turn." Yuyi's eyes burst into a fierce light. He almost fell completely because of Narashikaku just now. He was determined not to let this resourceful ninja go. That would be like letting a tiger go back to the mountain. Yuyi accumulated flame energy in his bloody mouth, roared, and a 3-meter-long fireball spewed out, carrying a wave of heat, and whistled towards Narashikaku's face. Narashikaku had already used up all the chakra in his body when he controlled Yuyi several times before. Coupled with the death of close friends one after another, even Narashikaku, who was as smart as a demon, couldn't help but lose his concentration and missed the best time to dodge.